3rd, 2025. I relinquish my duties as chair over to VP Lopez for the evening.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Vice President.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I hope you get better quick, okay? Okay.
I hope to feel better quick. Thank you.
Okay. Call to order, do we have, okay, let's all stand for Pledge of Allegiance, please. Ben, you don't have to.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Here,
Present.
Dr. Kavanaugh, Mr. Hurd, Mr. Lopez,
Present.
Mrs. Moore,
Present.
Dr. Nevarez Martinez,
Present.
Dr. Rodriguez,
Present.
Mrs. Strode, Ms. Williams. Quorum is present.
May I address the chair? VP Lopez, I am aware of Trustee Hurd's absence and also Trustee Kavanaugh's absence at this
Okay.
time.
Sure. Okay, next we have the reading of our mission. Do I have any volunteers? Well, how about we start with Ms. Boyer? Trustee Boyer.
The Lansing School District's mission is to provide a high-quality education and a culturally safe and nurturing environment that supports all students to live purposeful and fulfilling lives.
Thank you very much. Do we have any additions to the agenda from any of the board members?
I want to add about just the mission statement reading. I want to make a motion that we have a kind of order in what everybody has the opportunity to read the mission statement to the whole year.
Yeah, I think we can have a calendar and assign each week who's going to read the mission.
Yeah, we need to have the motion maybe later.
Yeah, I was hoping that we could also include the vision in addition to the mission, to have the
maybe
vision
if
and then the
we add
mission.
in the agenda, we can talk about that later on.
Okay, you want to add that for discussion or you want to?
Whatever you want, you are the president.
I think we already discussed it. Okay. Do we have any public comment? Nope. All right. Let's go to our first item of item 7, presentations, human resources.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Vice President Lopez. I'd like to bring up the Human Resources Department. Come on up to the table. Before they begin, I just want to certainly say to the board and to the public, human resources is, of course, the backbone of a district. The people that work for us, the people that work for our children, the people that work for our community. And there's been a disconnect over the years around making sure that the people that work with us are really part of the community, that really are addressing the mission, the vision. And I think what's been great about this board is you've continuously asked questions about how is hiring going, who are we hiring, what's the story, what's our kind of our trajectory. And what you're going to hear today is a lot of real deep kind of understanding of what's happened over the last couple of years, where we are, and certainly where we're going. I will say, and I'm looking at Ryan, we are not up, right? Okay, so I just want to make sure for the record that because of some internet issues in the district, we are not live streaming this this meeting, but we are taping it and we will put it on YouTube and all of our other channels. So there is nobody listening at home. I'm sad. Sorry, David. But we will be making this meeting public once we wrap and then post it. So without further ado, Senior Director of HR, Mr. Ross, take it away.
push. There it is. Now I can move it back. Bear with me, I'm experimenting. Okay. Do we have the clicker? Is this ready to go? Back. Okay. I have here some slides, of course. You know, I can't come here and not have a bunch of slides, but I do hope that the slides tell more of a story. I want to think through this with you, and we've made a lot of changes, and we've also seen a lot of, there's a lot of pride in our office right now. It's us two right now that are representing it, but I want to start by saying that our office is kind of feeling like we have accomplished some things, and I don't want to take any credit for that. That's a lot of their hard work. So I just want to preface the slides with that. And I hope that we tell a story that you can kind of push back on a little bit, and you can kind of probe some questions when you get to the data that we have. And then, of course, we want to tap into your wealth of knowledge up here as well. There's some data in here that I think you'd be interested in saying, what about this or what about that? And I hope this is a continued conversation. So I just wanted to think through that before we start going slide by slide. All right. So the first thing I want to start with is the roadmap that we left off with, I think it was last October, that we presented some data to you and some slides and demographic and staffing numbers and that kind of thing. In full disclosure, I stole this stuff right here from my last job, the recruit hire. I mean, as good educators do, we steal what's good and leave what's not behind. But at the onset, I want to say that the first two goals up there, I think we've made some headway. The third one, you're going to see some data later that's going to show, I think we need a lot of work in that area. And and I'm happy to say we've uncovered some things that lead us in the direction where we need to take some action in this. We're not just guessing anymore. So the first two, we've increased educator applicant pool, we've reduced vacancies, we've reduced barriers to entry. Andrew will talk a little bit about that. So right now, this is a snapshot of our district, 24 schools, 10,974 students, and roughly 1,600 employees. This includes adult ed, this includes GSRP, this includes their retiree subs in here. So if you go to my school data, you're not going to see exactly this because we wanted to throw everything at these numbers and say this is our total number. So the sources of all of the information we get when we're gathering information is at the bottom of the slide. Either this is internal my school data or
yeah, just one thing to add for the board, of course, and for the folks that'll watch this later is when you go to the Michigan states, the state of Michigan's numbers, you're always going to see things a little bit different. Like when they talk about our enrollment, that enrollment is the count enrollment. So that doesn't include adult ed, that doesn't include our preschool work. So those are kids that we serve, but also, of course, those are employees that serve those kids as well, and we certainly think of all of them as family. So I just want to make sure that if you do see different data to explain why this is the full picture of the district of Lansing, not necessarily just K-12 or just the employees that support them.
Yeah. Thank you. Next one, we have student race and ethnicity. This is over the last 3 years. This is pulled from my school data, so you can go and it should match it exactly with what we have here. And you can see there's very little change year to year, but we get a good sense of who our students are by this data, you know, their racial and ethnic identity. Next one is our teacher race and identity. I actually want to say that this is one piece of our teachers, but I want to think about who our teachers are. I want you to ask that question to yourself. Who are our teachers? Because there's some slides here that represent different slices of who our teaching force are currently, and those needs change based on years in the field, based on credentials and those kinds of things. So our teacher race and ethnicity, one of the things I want to point out is that we've made some gains with Black or African American teachers, and we see some progress, but we see some areas where we need some growth. Let's just be honest, like that's where it is. But when you think about our retention rate, we're not getting rid of all of our teachers and replacing them. So change is slow when you're thinking about a 15% turnover. We just want to see it trending in the right direction, and I'm happy to see that this is what we see.
Yeah, and one thing to add to that, I mean, because Clayton and Andrew won't take the bow, but, you know, one of the things that this board has been really clear about and has directed us is to really make sure that we are trying to diversify staff, trying to make sure that we're bringing folks into the district. The idea that the black teacher numbers are going from 8 to 13, you might say, well, that's 5%. But that's more than 50% increase. That's a huge number. And also to what Clayton is talking about, you can only hire folks if there are vacancies. I'm not hopefully planning on firing a bunch of folks. So you got to also understand the kind of incremental gain. But the fact that you're going from 8 to 13, that's 5%, but 5 over 8, it's more than 50%. That's huge. And then, of course, where do you see that coming from is the white teacher population went from 82 to 75. Now, do these numbers represent the data in the page before? Absolutely not. But this board, and you know, in the 3 years or now 4 years I've been here, one of the things that you can see is the narrative and the trajectory of what we're trying to do. But I will say, if there are any Native Americans out there, Native Hawaiians, Hispanic, Asian, those numbers really haven't moved, and we certainly would like to hire them because we want to diversify our staff. But again, and this is something we'll probably talk about later, is to be a teacher, there's certain credentialing, and so it's a little bit more difficult when you're going out into the field to hire if you're kind of capped by credentialing. And there's a whole conversation that we can have about the paper ceiling, which is something that we'll probably talk about later. But just to highlight on this page, this is really good movement for a district this size with the kind of numbers that we're looking at. So, thank you.
Another snapshot of who our teachers are, years of service. There's something that literally stands out up there. It's the 120 in year one. I like to think of that number as a lot of hard work from the person to my right about hiring people in the last 2 years, but it also says to us that we have a young teacher force. We filled a lot of vacancies, but who do we fill them with and what do they need? I think that's the bigger question that we're wrestling with as a department as we see these numbers go in a direction that we like, but also see we have some exit data and some feedback that goes in a direction of need. So years of service, you can see there's a real lull in the middle. And we've worked with an organization called TNTP that has uncovered similar trends. We're not the only ones, but when you look at those, there's a potential, when you have somebody working 47 years in the district, we'd love to keep them more, but what's the likelihood of working 50? But you see a big bubble there that there's people on the verge of retirement, and we need to think about that down the road because that could come up quicker than we think. So
yeah, and I also want to add the 120 for the year one and the 25 for zero, meaning that they've been hired in the last, let's say, 12 to 15 months. I appreciate that looks very, very high, but one of the things that you can ascribe that to, which you'll see in a slide coming up, is the fact that we're finally filling vacancies. That's a huge thing, right? So when I got here, the number of vacancies for teachers was like 100. Now it's much less, which I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, so we will lead with that. But if you're looking at vacancies of 100, anybody you hire is only going to be a first-year teacher. That's just the way it is. This isn't years of service in the profession, it's years of service to the Lansing School District. And so that's just one thing to couch to when you're looking at these numbers. That 120 and that 25, that's awesome because what that says is we've hired 145 people this year who are certified teachers who are in classrooms working with our kids.
yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think a lot of these teachers, when you get to the certification part of this, you're seeing a lot of them are first year, second year. We're stealing some from, I'm not going to name names, but we're stealing them from some charter schools, and I'm happy. We're stealing one teacher who came. There's an MLive article, you can look it up. It's about a book that they were teaching that the parents were mad they were teaching, and we said, come on over, teach it here. So there's a lot to be proud of in some of the efforts where we're drawing people, I think, but there's deeper analysis here about steps and using experience. We can't really just go in and grab resumes and really analyze those the way we'd like. So I think that there's further look at who these teachers are and their true experience. Our current principals and assistant principals, these are student-facing admin in buildings. This is by race and ethnicity. This is as of 1/22/25 for this year's. The other is end of year last year. So you can see the demographic breakdown of those folks. We are at this point, white administrators are the minority of our building-facing admin. One thing I'll say about this, why this reflects more, it reflects more of our student body. It mirrors that a little closer, is when you talk about applicant pools, which is one of the things we're trying to do, is expand the pool of applicants we have to choose from. Principals are, like, there's a lot of teachers who think they'd make great principals. Some of them are right, some of them aren't. But there's another slide to show that as well. But when you can actually attract more people, you can do more work on diversifying your teacher force. So I think this is reflective of that narrative as well.
And again, I mean, there's research after research after research. When children see folks that look like them, that have similar experiences, especially in leadership positions, that really matters. And the idea that we have 55% of our school leaders are people of color, that are actually, I guess, 57, is really indicative of when we have an applicant pool, we're able to really do what we think is best for the district. Now, of course, talent will out. We want to always make sure that the right person is in the job. But again, when we're opening up and when we're recruiting and we're doing all those things, we're able to really get something really significant. The fact that we're at 57% of school leaders are people of color, that's huge. I mean, there are districts in this state that have a larger percentage of students of color than we do, that have a handful of people of color as leaders. And the fact that we have more than 50%, I think the board should be really proud, because a lot of this, when I got here, was a directive to me and a directive of making sure that leadership looked like our kids and looked like our community. And I think we've been able to do that. Now, because the N is so small, we don't have 1,000 we don't have 1,000 schools. This can fluctuate a little bit here and there. But the idea that this is above 50% this year is really a great thing for those efforts.
So here's a snapshot of the other bargaining units as well, just if you're wondering about our total staff, because I started with that, the 1,600 employees that we have. If you look at LSEA is one I want to highlight here, because you'll see this is even more representative of our students. And there's another, like a deeper dive to have with that group, because I just showed you the teachers. Those are classroom teacher positions. LSEA is the bargaining unit. So what that means is you have ancillary folks who are dean of students, you have behavior specialists, you have student support specialists, you have behavioral health or mental health clinicians. You have all of these other ancillary positions that are student facing that are far more diverse than our teaching staff. And that goes back to Ben's point about the paper ceiling. These don't require teaching certs. Some of them require master's degrees, and that is the most diverse group of ancillary folks we have, are the ones that require the most credentials. But it's the teaching cert that sometimes is the barrier. So there's another slide to address that. So I feel like I'm hoping it's a little narrative feel. All right, our staff retention. This is year to year. This is if you ended the year with us and you returned with us. That's typically how it's done. You can see it drops. There's other than our ancillary folks that they stuck around. But 85% is not really troubling to me. There's a lot of people who this is not necessarily the field they need to be in. You spend a year here, and we don't want somebody this is not for you, right? We would rather hire somebody that wants to do this work. But it's also in line with some national statistics on 14 to 15%. There's, if I recall, like even the EPIC study has, somewhere around 12 to 14 in turnover on average. So I mean, you talk about urban districts, you're even higher turnovers in places. So there's nothing that I see as troubling here, but I do think that why people are leaving is the more important thing. Those that should leave, that we want to say, you gave your best effort, but the way you're treating kids, not acceptable. That I'm willing to cut ties with that person. That person's struggling, that doesn't get the support. That's where I want to put my efforts.
And the one thing to also note, that 85% for 2024 in terms of LSEA teachers, again, is Clayton's saying, we're really right in line with the national average, the Michigan average. But the thing I would want to point out is I actually think that it's really good. And the reason for that is think about how many new teachers we've brought on in the last year or two. So you're going to inherently see, if you're bringing in 200 new teachers, 100 new teachers, the likelihood is that more of them are not going to make it in the first 2 years than a third-year teacher or a fifth-year teacher or a 10th-year teacher. And so the fact that it's only dropped by about 7 points, again, I'm not worried, right? I don't ever want these numbers to be 100, because that means that out of 1,600 employees, you're telling me everybody is perfect for us? That can't possibly be true, right? And so if this dipped to about 80, I think that is a troubling number. I think that would be something we would really need to look into. But the 85 for LSEA teachers is about that. I will say the troubling number that I do see, and we did talk about this, and I want to be very frank here, of course, is the LEA. The fact that 73% we lost, that was something that we were really concerned about. But we've been very clear with this board that one of the reasons why that was happening is because our LEA contract was low. We were not paying our assistants very well. Well, you all know that we just signed a great new contract that puts our people at a much higher rate of pay, and we're really thinking that next year we'll be able to retain more. We know this is a market. If you can do the exact same job and get paid a lot more somewhere else, we understand why you might think about leaving. And so we saw that with the LEA folks. We completely respect that and understand that. And that's why we were so proud of finally getting that contract done that brings them up to where we are. But, you know, when I look at this page, I go, ooh, that LEA number, we got to fix. And I think that we're working pretty strongly on that.
That's a good point, because the contract was not in place over the summer. They knew we were bargaining, but we couldn't tell them. The other thing that we have done is LEA we do recruit from them. Like if you are, there's possibility that some of those 73% moved over into the teaching lane, changed bargaining units. So that's also a possibility. So there's more look into that for us.
And if you remember the way that the Grow Your Own grant works, is it's people who are assistants becoming teachers. We didn't have that $1 million 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. We didn't have the ability to send people to college. So I appreciate that, Clayton. I think that is some of it, which is a great thing. And then some of it, I think, was our low salary.
The good news is LEA within year, does stay with us. So 94%. If you started the year, you ended the year. This is just one that I was interested in figuring out, like, if somebody starts with us, what's the likelihood, what percentage of that group ends with us that year, doesn't bail on us mid-year. And so there's similar numbers in 86%, but LEA is kind of a markedly different look at that, with 94% compared to the 73 in the last slide. So they stick with us, they stick it out during the year, and then probably find employment elsewhere. And that probably fits more of the narrative of the market. This is our pathway for certification. It's also a snapshot into who holds certs and who holds a permit. So it's not on this slide, but I do want to briefly talk about a teaching certificate is something that is issued that allows you to teach year over year. It allows you to teach in a lane and a subject area. You get an endorsement. It is something credentialed by the Michigan Department of Education. A permit allows you to teach during that year. It is a permit that is issued it's legal, you can teach. We have people that come in that have an engineering degree, you want to teach math, great, you get a permit. You have people that want to teach elementary and have some early childhood experience. We have somebody that has a early childhood degree but wasn't a teaching cert pathway, great, we'll get you one. But they don't hold a cert, they hold a permit. So there's some difference in language sometimes when people say permit, endorsement, cert. There's an interim teaching cert, there's a daily permit, there's a full year basic, but like nothing is made easy in this world. But I wanted to narrow it down to you either hold a cert, which is what Ben was talking about with sometimes there's a paper ceiling there, or you have a permit, which you're great with kids, you have some content knowledge, let's get you in front of them and see how you do. So this is the percentage of folks who hold a cert and hold a permit, and it's roughly around 20% who have permits over, just to kind of make it a blanket pattern for the last 3 years. We're seeing more people, of course, with fewer certs come in because we're offering those things on the bottom. It didn't come through, and there's a graphic there. It's called Teachers of Tomorrow. That didn't come through right there, but that also didn't come through on the printout. Is it on there? Okay, well, it's not up here, so there's something wrong with that one, but that's fine. It's hashtag Teach and Teachers of Tomorrow are alt route programs. We have 93 people currently enrolled in that. That actually is those folks that come in without a cert and they have a permit. You can get enrolled, you get an interim teaching cert once you pass your test. You have 3 years, you're with us for 3 years. If you leave, then we say you don't get that interim teaching cert. We kind of hold you to that 3 years that you're with us. The other pathway is a degree granting and a cert pathway. We have people pursuing a master's degree, we have people pursuing just their cert, we have people pursuing their bachelor's degree through Central Michigan. We have 17 currently enrolled. And then with our round 2, we have an MOU that was sent. We have some tweaks to make before we actually sign it, but Davenport has an MOU, their College of Urban Education, and I'm working with Michigan State on partnering with some of their teachers to work as parapros. We're still working out some of the details, but coming in, being parapros, and having tuition reimbursement to work with us with a commitment that they will then teach with us. So these are kind of the buckets where we put our efforts to get people past that certification threshold.
One thing to that.
Yep.
As Ben mentioned on our last slide, one of our big recruitment pools, right, is our current LEA assistants, right? And so these alternative pathways into teaching roles is one of the best ways for us to continue to diversify our teaching force, right? By not restricting our teaching roles to people just with traditional teacher cert pathways, we're able to really broaden our search and include a lot more people. I should have thought of it before. We should have included some demographics in terms of who fits into these different categories, because I do believe the data would show that these pathways are incredibly diverse relative to our other teaching population, which is really exciting, right? Again, just continuing to broaden who's able to actually obtain teaching degrees while getting paid, while doing it with us, while serving our kids right away, which is really cool. So, yeah.
So we have some exit survey data. This is where we'll probably get interesting. You might have some questions, but I do think it's good to hear even people that are disgruntled, they're leaving, they hate you, they have all, the kids are terrible, because it's, as a lot of qualitative data is, it's perception data. There's some data in here that I would want to throw out because I know how wrong that was, but that's their reality. That's what they sent on the way out. What do we do? Like some of those you cut ties with, and you're like, I can't deal with that. Some of them are quite legitimate, right? And I get every one of them. They come in, Christina gets them. Sometimes we're like, what's up with that? And we go and check on it. We had 4 people resign in 48 hours. I called all 4 of them. I was like, what is happening? And then we get to the bottom of it. We figure out what's going on and we make some changes. But this is the first year we've actually been able to use this data. So I want to draw your attention to the little box there. I just added it. It didn't deserve its own slide. I don't care for, celebrations. I think that just reality is enough. So we have received 161 responses for exit surveys in the last year and a half. We redid our process. We redid the questions. It's Qualtrics. It goes out. We actually redid the way it even is sent out. Our response rate is, I'm very happy with it comparative to what we had in the past. It is about 28, it's close to 30 more than we had in the 5 years prior combined. And so when you're thinking about yield on getting feedback, you want your end to be larger. So I'm quite happy with that response. I think that our work to do now is how do we make this more robust? How do we add a layer of follow-up questions, and how do we have some more interactive process around these.
And one thing to add, if the board remembers, there was a concern 3 years ago about the survey data and are we getting any? And as you can see, we took a look at that. For 5 years in a row, or the combined for 5 years, it was very low. Now in just a year and a half, we have more responses than we did for the 5 years previous. Yeah. Now, what are those responses? We'll get into that and we can talk about it. But just the sheer fact that we now have, in just a year and a half, more people are responding, that is better. Because I think, again, we changed the way that we address them, the way that we got to them, because we really do want to know their feelings, good or ill, because that's the only way that we're going to learn. So I appreciate that you put that box in, because I know that something that this board had been very clear about is, hey, we need to know. Great, let's fix it. And sadly, I think previously the district didn't want to know, and they were not actually asking, and so that's why you wouldn't get much. But now we're getting a lot, and let's go into the data.
Yeah. So, and I think I want to put this out there. It's not, some of it is not glowing, right? I mean, these are people who no longer work for you. These aren't employee satisfaction surveys. This is quite a different beast. So when you look at the first question up there, that one stands out to me because you're looking at people are leaving and their top choice is pursuing a career path with a more stress-free environment. We're mid-year and we're almost at the same response rate as, or the same selection rate as all of last year. I think that's concerning, and I think that we look at it, we can filter out the 5 that you lasted a day and you blamed the kids, and there's some that say the kids are violent, they use criminal. Yeah, we don't want them in front of our kids. But there are some that are like, there was no structure, and we have to look into that and take it seriously. So, I put this out there to say we're trying to say, here it is, ask us some questions, and ask us what we're doing about it, because I think that we want your feedback as well. We also have some pretty good ideas. That one stands out to me. The rest of them are pretty, about midway where we were last year. But that one is almost, we're one away from receiving with half the response rate of matching last year's. I had to tap into some grad school experience and do some coding on this for some qualitative data, which, it's been a while. But this is my efforts to reduce these down, the open-ended questions, into some codes and some areas where I think we can look at analysis. And you see that other opportunities, people are not leaving as much for those. But if you look at leadership and support and student behavior, those ones stand out again. Those speak to culture and climate. And what are we doing about those? Are they coming all from 1 or 2 schools? Are they coming all from middle schools? This is all data. Because if the end would be so small if we just moved out into bargaining units or talked about schools. But internally we get these and we know where they're coming from. And that's where some of the immediate action was taken in some steps. And we have another slide later to talk about that.
Yeah, and a couple of things to point out with this. One, with the other opportunities, you saw that it goes from 15 to 3, but just as a reminder again, that the last year numbers are for full year. A lot of times people will leave at the end of the year because they have other opportunities. Right. And the reason why that number 3 is so low is because we're in the middle of the year. And then of course, if you go back, a lot of times it's things like same career, but a different district due to life circumstances. We have a lot of folks that time their lives based on the calendar of the school. They finish up the year, they move to Texas. That's what a lot of that is. I wasn't surprised to see that number being very low on this slide because it's only half year. A lot of times people don't leave their house, their life, their whatever to go move somewhere in the middle of the year unless it is usually for a promotion. And so what you will see sometimes in the previous slide is, different career path within the field of education at a different district or organization. We do know that we'll have a teacher, let's say, become an assistant principal in another district in the mid-year because, well, hey, it's a promotion and you do that. But you typically don't go teacher role unless there's something wrong, and that's where you go here. Again, the pay, the 6-to-1 ratio, I don't want anybody to think that pay isn't an issue. It's just that typically you're not going to get a different teacher job with the different salary kind of in the middle of the year. But I will say the leadership and support and the student behavior, which was highlighted, this is something we look at, but we also have to go into what's the qualitative data here. One of the things that we did here in our surveys was teachers started with us and lasted a week, and in their exit survey, it was all about how terrible our children were. Well, I don't know if I want that person working for us. But if it's a teacher who's been here for 5-10 years and says, wow, something's different, the school I'm at, it's just not being supportive of me, that's super concerning. And so that leadership and support issue, we really do look deeply. Are they all coming from the same school? Is it the same principal? What's the issue? And that's where we get to the work that we have to do as a leadership team. What do we do with those schools? So, these numbers are not, I would say, stellar, but they're also not surprising. And so sometimes you could look at it in a positive, sometimes you can look at it as a negative. The most important thing for us as a district is take the data and make it useful and actually do something about it. And you'll see some more things about that later.
And I will say there's, looking at that 13, and of that is 38, right? It's 13 out of 38. I can tell you 4 of them were a concern that we addressed right away, at the beginning of the year, first 2 weeks into school. So 4 of those people, we couldn't save them. I called them, but it was a concern. We addressed it. One of them, see you later. But I didn't exclude him from that data. So we do read all of their actual data, and they're open-ended questions, and kind of try to sift through the stuff that's legitimate and what's not. This one's interesting, employee experience. The takeaways here are that I think people generally like the type of work they're doing, even as they leave. If you look over a type of work, it's more favorable. The one that stands out is colleagues. They like who they work with. They're leaving, but they still like who they work with. And I think balance that with flexibility, schedule, and professionalism. And a lot of times people will look at professionalism and think that's a work culture. Well, we can't really do much about flexibility. You can't start at 9. We've had people really, and it's like, nope, kids are here, it's 7:40. You can't start at 9. That's just not within the contract. Those are guardrails that we have that we can't cross. But same thing with schedule. Like, we're not going to do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday for you. This college is over. You got to show up. It's a real world, and this is a job. But professionalism, I think, lends itself to colleagues and supervisor. So I think when you look at those, the flexibility and schedule are really talking about rigid things that we don't have much control over, but we do have control over culture, or at least have some influence on that. And then, pay is another thing that's contractual. There's not much we can do with that. And equity and inclusion, we can definitely make strides on that. It's pretty balanced at this point.
And again, because this is all all employees, right?
All employees.
Is that we do know that there are certain bargaining units that were not getting paid as well as they should. And so I want you to see that pay as that's something that we agree with, that some of the pay is an issue and we're trying to address it. But as of today, our starting salary in almost all of our bargaining units is actually as high as pretty much anywhere else in mid-Michigan, which is really great. But I do want people to see the supervisor issue, right? So, people can love me or hate me, but all of my direct reports have stayed for basically 3 years. So that's kind of great. And thank you, guys. But, when we're talking about supervisor, these the way to look at this is look at our directors, our principals, or things like that. And so we understand that we do have something to deal with. And as Clayton mentioned, when those 4 teachers, let's say, all left maybe the same school all at the same time, that's indicative to us about maybe we need to make some leadership changes. And that's why the board and the community sees us trying to make changes as quickly as we can based on employee experience. But I will highlight again that, there are things that are happening in the job market in total in the world that schools are not really built for. I cannot tell you the number of times people will even try to email me, Ben, is there just any way I don't have to work on Friday? No, I don't know. I mean, no. You know, is there any way that that I can come in 2 hours later? Well, that's not the way that the district works. Now, I'm very happy for us to think in a flexibility way, but it is the makeup of a school district that lends us to. But I want to acknowledge these people's experiences, because what is the truth? The truth is, if you have a master's degree in curriculum development, you can get a job at a software company coming in at 9:30, not working on Fridays or working remotely. So it's something we have to think about. But at this point, the way that school districts are built, it's very, very difficult for us to. So I don't want to negate anything. These are valid concerns. These are human beings. They have their right to do this. But it's just, if you're going to be a third grade teacher, right now at least, you got to be in that room with our kids from 8 to 3, Monday through Friday. Unless I call a snow day, like I did the last 2 days. So there you go.
All right. This is where I'm most proud of my team. This one, I think, I don't lead with it because that's not me. But if you look at this, I just want to highlight the blue square there. I put it in to make sure that everyone could see. This is last year, right? This is where we were last year. We were hovering, this is a monthly average. We were hovering in between 55 and 60 teacher openings. So this is classroom teacher. We were around between 10 and 15 special ed openings. I know, Ben, you wanted me to add something there to the slide about the year before. We don't have a lot of data for the year before that I've actually collected, right? I need to make sure that it's accurate. I do have a binder that I found and inherited, and it said 94 on it, LSEA positions, but that, you alluded to 100 plus at one point. So we made some progress, but over the summer, the office was buzzing. There were interviews going on like crazy. People were working very hard. And that was my first summer in that role. And I realized summer is the time when you're on. Teachers are off, we're on. And you can see we reduced that to hovering around 20. The dotted line reflects where we're going to be. It's just that data I keep these up to date. We meet weekly with principals. He does, I do not. But 15-minute check-ins to make sure what's going on with your staff. We need to know, is there a problem? Is somebody likely going to leave? And so we want real-time information, not just that we can extract from finance, but like what's happening in the school. And so I put that dotted line there because we're going to fill you actually have the numbers later, so I'm not going to try to off the top of my head, but 5 to 6 positions at North. So it's going to bring it right back down where we started, probably dip below 20. I think that's a big deal. I think it's important to bring up to say we've reduced it. I mean, when you reduce vacancies by 2/3 and everything else seems to still be moving along, I think that's worth celebrating. So I don't want to take the credit. I want it to be the people who did a lot of the work beyond me.
Of course, I told Clayton he should lead with a slide because this is the slide. This is the story. But what I appreciate is the humbleness of the HR department. But to the board, you remember that 2 years ago we had 100-ish. We had 95 to 102 vacancies. Last year we were able to make a pretty big dent in that, got us down to the low 60s and the mid 50s, and kept pretty stable. And then we are now at the 20s. That is incredible. Clayton, Andrew, your entire team, Christina, who oversees it, this makes the difference. This is how districts move forward. If you have a district that has 60 teacher vacancies, you can't move forward because you have non-certified, non-teachers in those rooms, cycling through. This is incredible. And, the board knows that I send them a weekly email. I give them the numbers, and these are all the numbers that you've seen. These are where the numbers come from. And so this is the chart that I think we should be really, really proud of. Are we perfect? No. Do we have a lot to do? Absolutely. But this shows you just how strong the HR department has been in the last year or two. And a lot of it is really since Clayton took over the department and was able to do the work. So, congratulations, folks. This is really, really amazing. And what I appreciate also is you did all of this hiring, and you notice they've stayed, or at least you've been able to replace them. And that's really powerful because it would be one thing if it went from May to September and then spiked back up into October, but that's not what happened, is that we were able to really keep on it. So congratulations on this most important slide, even though you buried the lead, so.
Yeah, but you didn't, the thing that you actually wanted to highlight is the special ed vacancies. We didn't touch that yet. But I do think I want to point to that. It's 0 at one point in December. It is now 1, but it may not be 1. Yeah, it may not be 1 as of who knows when. We had people, nine people on board just today, and we didn't have internet. That's another story. Given that last slide is the highlight, a lot of that work was done by the person to my right, Andrew. This is the changes to the interview process. I'm gonna let him talk through that, and then talk through the changes we've made to our applications, our recruitment, our hiring, all the experience people have when they apply for jobs and interviews, and how we interact with the hiring managers. Like, how do we get people in front of principals? Like, we record interviews now, we send them out to people. Are you interested? Like, we make sure that they get in front of people, and we get more results that way.
Yeah. Cool. Those of you who we made this presentation to last year might recognize this slide because it's a change we made about a year and a half ago. Essentially, though, the big change is in the past, it was you applied to one job, you were interviewed for that one job, you either got that one job or you didn't, and then your road was over, right? We have made a pretty big shift in terms of like our philosophy behind hiring, where when you apply, you basically enter into an applicant pool, right? And the way it works for any certified role, I will talk to you first. Like, we will have a 15-minute conversation with every single one to talk through what exactly you actually want to do, right? Make sure you actually understand all the roles that are open, all the roles that you are eligible for, how you get eligible for roles that you want that you're currently not eligible for, and then set up those next steps, right? Whether that be school visits, whether that be virtual interviews, as Clayton talked about, whether that be saying, hey, now is not the right time for you. Let's talk again in 3 months. Let's talk again in 6 months, right? And then keeping that connection warm. Essentially, though, this is really important because it broadens our applicant pool from one person applied to a third grade teacher job at Gardner to, we actually had 7 people apply for upper elementary teacher jobs over the past couple weeks. They're all applicants for that job as well as every other upper elementary job, as well as maybe they applied for an instructional coach job, but they're not ready for that yet. Great, let's talk to them about other teacher jobs that they can work up to instructional coach job in the future. And just really broadening that pool to make sure that there really is no dead end with us. Instead, it's just kind of a loop back around, right? If a job is not right for you, how do we redirect you and keep you engaged? Because if you're interested in working for us, it is our job to find a job for you. It is not our job to turn you away unless, again, there's serious concerns. So, yeah.
I will say not everyone's happy with the redirect
Yep.
because they always think they're going to be the superintendent. So, but a good feedback is honest and it's direct, and it's like, we don't want to push you away. So, you're not going to be a principal. Let's start somewhere where you can work your way up to that.
Yeah.
But I will say that slide, 3 or 4 slides back with the 120 first year and then 55. He has personally, I bet you he could name off 100 of them. Like, off the top of his head, he has personally met and interviewed and talked with, and like, there's a much more personal touch that they have a point person to go to now. And I think that's a big improvement that I don't know that that he is going to highlight. But it's hard to catch him not in an interview. I'm just going to say that.
It's a problem. Another big piece of this change, about a year ago, actually exactly a year ago, we implemented a new applicant tracking system. An applicant tracking system essentially is the tool that we use for everyone to apply, right? It's also the tool we use to actually review applications. The tool we used to have was a little bit outdated. It was built for schools, but it was built for schools a long time ago. You had to log in, you had to remember your password. It took you probably about 20 minutes to fill out an application from end to end, and you're probably going to fill out the same information a few different times before you're actually done, right? It's not a candidate-friendly experience. The other problem with our old platform was, while some job board aggregators, and I can kind of define that word if you'd like me to, but some of them might pick up our jobs, but there's no guarantee they'd end up anywhere, right? This is a big problem because in today's day and age, while some people might look up, like go to our website, click on our job board and actually go to a specific job, a lot of people are typing in Lansing School District jobs or teaching jobs near me, right? And Google's job is to redirect them back to us. So the new job board and the new applicant tracking system we've implemented is called Lever. Lever is not built for schools, but we've adjusted to make it work for our schools in a really cool way. There's no login required, mobile friendly. Any of you could apply to a job right now in 5 minutes or less, right? It allows us to get quick information, the information we actually need from somebody immediately, figure out what steps need to be done with you, communicate with you through the platform, document that communication, which is a huge change, get feedback from other hiring managers on you within the same platform. And then the fun part is we know for a fact it's going out to Indeed, it's going out to LinkedIn, it's going out to Glassdoor. Top School Jobs is a platform that we pay for a connection with. They scrape our jobs, I believe it's every single day, every single night, and they automatically post them to this national job board for just educators. There's other aggregators that also pick up Lever jobs better and easier than TalentEd. This is really cool. So sadly, we don't have great data because another problem with TalentEd, it gave us no data, 0. So we don't have data on like applicant numbers. Hopefully a year from now when we sit here again, we can talk through actually how our applicant numbers are changing over the course of time. Because the really cool thing with Lever is it tells you exactly where somebody found us originally, how they got to us. We'll talk through the candidate experience data as well. But it basically allows us to spread our jobs far and wide and also simplify that process to make sure nobody starts an application with us and gets dismayed because it's taking them too long because they say, not worth it. Can't have that. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be, like, this is baseline data that we're going to share, is that we don't have anything to compare it to, but it's interesting, a lot of the stuff that we can do with the data we collect in Lever.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, one of these things is candidate experience, right? So not everybody who applies, but everybody who hits the virtual interview stage in our platform, which is one of our preset stages, is sent what's called the candidate experience survey, right? Obviously not everyone's going to fill this out. This is going to people that both get jobs and don't get jobs. For some roles, it's more likely they did not get a job because we have a high applicant volume for some of those roles. But it asks them a variety of questions, basically summarizing what was your candidate experience like on a scale from, I believe it's actually 1 to 5, right? 1, you had a horrible experience. 5, you had an awesome, amazing experience. As you can see, a lot of our candidate experiences are hovering around the 4.5 mark, right? That to me is a good sign. Obviously, there's room for improvement there. And there's some qualitative data that comes with it. Not much, so we're not going to share that, but definitely some room for improvement, especially with our LASA roles, right? As we've talked about, our candidate pools for LASA jobs are massive. We usually get 10, 15, sometimes like more than 20 applicants for a single principal, assistant principal, other types of jobs, right? That candidate experience is also going to involve a lot more people. Hello. You're going to interact with multiple different hiring managers. You're going to interact with Ben at some point in time. You're going to interact with our senior directors of schools. It's going to take a little bit longer. And so we know that candidate experience score is a little bit lower. We have objectively work to do there. However, again, that's a lot more people who also didn't get the jobs they applied for. And they maybe were frustrated by the lack of that as well.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. What I'm impressed by is, you've got a lot of folks, secretaries and assistants and teachers that like the experience. Leadership does not. I think we probably have a lot to do here. Some of it is that we have such large applicant pools that I'm not always sure that we are responding to every applicant. And if we are, is it just a form letter saying, hey, look, sorry, but maybe, you know, it's a phone call, maybe it's a meeting. But I will also say that in some of these meetings, you know, to get to me kind of for a principal job, you know, you've already made a lot of hoops. It takes a long time. But I've also noticed that some people will apply for jobs that they are just blatantly unqualified for. And if they're applying for stuff that they just are unqualified for and they don't get an interview, we have received emails like, how could you do this? I would be the greatest principal of Everett ever. And you're like, you've taught for a year and you don't have any test scores, right? So, you know, there are some things that we see out of the applicant pool that's a little bit different, but I do want us to acknowledge that those jobs in LASA take a long time, and we can do a better job doing it quicker. We can do a better job making them more personal, and we can do a better job with probably giving feedback as to why, because I think a lot of times what will happen is, thank you so much, you're not moving on to the next round, and we don't necessarily say it's because in your interview you said X, Y, and Z. So
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the cool data points we get out of Lever is actually where candidates are coming from, right? So every single LSEA or LASA job that I can think of off the top of my head requires a degree, right? And so people actually have to enter the institutions that they went to, and it's not a type it in, because when people type things in, they might say MSU, they might say Michigan State, they might misspell Michigan. Hope they don't, but they might. This is a preset list, right? And so it actually allows us to track really good data over the course of time where people are coming from. As you can see, we have a very local candidate pool. That makes sense, right? Lansing, I love Lansing. I moved here intentionally, but Lansing is not a city oftentimes that attracts people like nationally, right? And so we don't have to fight that. I think, in fact, we should lean into this. On this list, almost all of these universities that we're drawing our top candidates from are from local or Michigan-based institutions, right? Michigan State, Central Michigan, Eastern, Western, Grand Valley, right? Our candidates are coming to us from the Michigan context. We need to continue to lean into that and focus on these people and focus our efforts. We do have some limited resources in terms of hiring, in terms of time. So the more we can focus on where people are actually coming from, I believe the better, right? I know that we've talked about the potential for recruiting at like HBCUs, right? You don't see any on this list. There are not any nearby us, right? That is something that we can continue to talk whether or not like the value of investing our time and resources there versus leaning into like the BSU at Michigan State. And as alternatives that might have a higher impact in terms of actually drawing people into to work with us, again, from our backyard, because they know us, they understand who we are, and might be more likely to actually accept a job with us at the end of the road, rather than flying all over the country and trying to go out of our way.
yeah, you know, this is a difficult one. I probably disagree with Andrew here, but I also defer to my wonderful HR department. We struggle with this. If we're going to have more Latino teachers, I'm not sure that looking at Michigan is going to give us the pool. We have certain populations from certain regions, from certain places. I think we need to consider what it means to reach out to places around the country. But I think Andrew's 100% right, which is it would be a huge mistake to not focus on our home. Because the truth is, until Lansing as a city is a different city, it is not one that people graduate college in Albuquerque and go, you know where I want to go? I want to go to Lansing. Now, I would love them to think that. I think that's super important, but it's tough, right? We want more diverse candidates, but we also want candidates that understand our experience. Well, what does that mean? And so I think Andrew's right that we absolutely need to double down on all the folks here, because they are the ones that know us and they're the ones that feel comfortable with us. But we also have to have a conversation around what is it going to take for us to diversify for real and bring in other folks. And we'll see. The HR department's done a great job, as you saw, going from 60-ish to 20-ish vacancies. We'd love, of course, to get to 0, but it is striking I will say it is striking when you look at this list, and every single one of those schools is Michigan, except for Walden, which is an online school, Western Governors University, which is an online school, and I don't know Cairo University. It could be Cairo in Illinois. It could be Cairo, Egypt. And if that is the case, it might be because of the other programs that we are running in this district. But when you look at everything else, the question I would ask us is, what is it about Lansing that people from outside of Lansing are not wanting to apply to us? It's a different lens, not anything's wrong with the fact that we get all these wonderful Michigan people, but there is a reduction in the number of people going into teaching programs in this country. And if we're only focusing on in-house, we might not be able to fill the void. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, why is this the number? Is there something we could do to attract talent from both within and without? So this is a slide that we talk about a lot because we have to figure out how to get from 20 to 0. And I don't know if we can do that, but we also have to go back to the scale, to the chart we saw earlier, is where are Latinx teachers, where are Pacific Islander teachers, where are Asian teachers, what are we looking at, and is that the diversity that we want for our own children, and is that a diversity that we're going to necessarily see from the universities we're looking at? And I don't know, and that's why I defer, and I really mean it. Andrew and Clayton are the experts here. I want to always defer, but I also want to be honest with this board and the community. When I look at this, there's a part of me that goes, wow, what is it about Lansing that nobody from outside of Michigan wants to come here?
And I think it's a really good point. And I also say, like, we've had in the past 3 months, I think that's right, an influx of people wanting to move here from Florida and from Texas and from some other places south of here, moving here as couples, right? Which is actually really interesting. And we will definitely continue to lean into that and tap into that. Like off the top of my head, there's literally 3 couples from Florida that are all trying to move here at the same time, 4 different jobs, which is really cool. So Ben's right. Like it's not an impossible task to continue to go out and diversify. We'll also talk a little bit about another diversification strategy that we've been pursuing recently that even goes beyond the United States, which has led to some really cool things. But yeah, it's a conversation to continue for sure. The other cool piece of data that Lever provides us is where, as I mentioned, where people actually are coming from. Obviously, a lot of people are finding us through our job board, right? That is a little bit misleading because that might be the other places that are directing them to our job board. But I think there are some interesting takeaways with that. Whereas LASA, obviously, it's more than half people are finding us through a job board. To me, that means people are actually seeking out roles in Lansing School District, coming to our job board, and applying to specific assistant principal, director roles, which I think is a really cool thing. With LEA, we have a ton of people applying through Indeed. That makes sense. Indeed is the hotspot for hourly type jobs. So our LEA jobs are most of our hourly positions. That makes a lot of sense to me that a lot of those are coming through Indeed. With LSCA, I think it's really interesting that percentage of people applying through LinkedIn is higher than it is for LAS in particular. A place for us to definitely lean into and continue to put resources there. The big thing with this, though, that stands out to me is the lack of referrals. This is an area that we have tremendous amount of room for growth. I know that's not actually true. Like, I know we have more people who work for us than is shown right here that come to us as referrals, but we need to spend, I need to spend a lot more time developing and really formalizing our referral program and familiarizing it with our entire staff, because the best way for us to actually recruit and take that number from 20 to 0 is turn every single person in the Lansing School District, all 1,600, into recruiters themselves. And that also will help, I believe, diversify our staff.
Elevate K-12 is something we're using this year. We piloted it last year, and we're using it very strategically. We don't want to say, we tread lightly. We have a great relationship with the union, but we also need to respect they don't want us to throw virtual teachers in and replace their members. So none of these folks replace a teacher in the classroom. It's just if they're not certified or if there's a 0.2, so there's some scheduling issues where we're not going to find a teacher to teach one class at Lansing Tech. We do have somebody who can sit and be the classroom coach and sit there and have a math class, an English class, a social studies class, and cover that. So we're using it to basically fill in gaps. And if we have somebody leave, one of these are Everett, somebody is out on leave, and we're backfilling essentially until, because we can pull the plug on that when that teacher's back. So this is our second year with it. This quote on the bottom is actually from one of our teachers. I didn't put her name there. I don't want to call her out, but she was in the report we had, and she is a science teacher pursuing science cert. We said, we have this split class, math and science. Let's give you the science or the math class, and she was a little reluctant, and she's super happy with it now because she gets to be in the classroom doing management, teaching her science classes, but then the content piece is being delivered by the teacher on the screen. You see this is an example of it up there. But she gets to see modeling half her day of somebody who's a veteran teacher. The average, I think it's like 17 years is the average teacher of the ones we have from Elevate. So 17 years of experience on a platform where they know what they're doing, and you're a second-year teacher. I think that's a beneficial thing to use, strategically. We don't want to throw it into a building where there's like 6 vacancies and just say, there, we've covered it, because that's not going to work. We know that other districts have tried this on a large scale, and it just doesn't work. Kids are just putting their laptop. I mean, you have to manage a class. It is a real classroom. It's not Edgenuity where they're doing it at their own pace. They take attendance, they call out kids. It is a classroom. If you're ever in there, it's running at Sheridan Road, stop by and visit it. I won't say that that's the quote from her or not, but that might be a good place to start. And then they also, because they're a company that wants us to use more of them, and we say, no, we're going to use them as a last resort. However, we like your service. They want to provide us with data. So they're always saying, here's our surveys. They're doing student satisfaction surveys. They're showing us data pre and post, all of that stuff, because they want to be on top of presenting the product to us. And I'm really not worried about the product. I want to know how are our students doing. If you can get that data to me, that would be great. So they are very good with trying to show the value of their product. But again, it's a last resort, but it's a useful one.
Yeah. So as I mentioned in our conversation with Ben, we've also developed some really cool partnerships with some staffing partners, I'll say. One of those being Teach for America, one of those being the International Alliance Group. I'll talk about each of those separately. Teach for America, you may or may not know about them. They're a national, very large national organization. Traditionally, their main focus was what they called core members. Core members are entry-level teachers, oftentimes their first teaching job. They get hired at TFA nationally, and then they actually get placed in Lansing, right? So I will have conversations with them still and talk them through what might be the best fits in terms of schools, in terms of grades, in terms of subjects. But they get hired nationally and then sent to us, and it's our job to place them. This past year, we hired 4 of what are called core members, right? It was our first year doing this. We were supposed to have 7. 3 of them had to back out for personal reasons the last minute. Hopefully this upcoming year, we'll have at least 7, if not closer to 10. They're great because they're super, it's a really, really competitive process to be selected as a core member. They may not have a traditional teaching background, but TFA actually provides a ton of professional development on top of the professional development that we can provide them. And the core members we have this year have been doing a phenomenal job from what I've heard in the schools that they're in. They also have this thing that's a newer element of their organization called the Teach Michigan Fellowship. So we have 8, so the 5 early career educators and the 3 national board certification fellows. Those are actually people that are still in the classroom or going to stay in the classroom, but they're getting paid additional money and they're getting additional professional development to stay in the classroom and go through professional development with Teach for America. They also have a combination of people that want to be leaders as well as people that are currently leaders, some in this room, who are going through additional training, additional development as well to strengthen their skills. Overall, Teach for America is an organization that we partner with to help bring us people as well as help keep our people with us. It's a twofold thing, both in recruitment as well as retention, and a partnership we'll continue to lean on. IAG is totally different. Their role is they recruit and then provide the visa sponsorship for international teachers, right? So this is the first year we've done this. We brought 9 teachers to the Lansing School District. from around the world, from the Philippines, from Kenya, from Mexico, from Venezuela, from Nicaragua, from Chile, which is really, really cool. It's a really unique opportunity. Usually the J1 visa processing is incredibly strenuous, it's really expensive, and it doesn't always result in success. So they take on that responsibility, obviously not for free, but they take on that responsibility. And then in return, like, we do the interviews with the teachers. They don't just send us whoever they want to. We have to do the interviews. We select teachers, and then we actually place teachers. We place teachers in hard to fill roles, middle school math, middle school science. And these are teachers that are certified, have experience in their home country, and they're bringing that here to the United States, here to Lansing. Where this is incredibly powerful is at our language immersion schools, right? And particularly at Luton. So obviously those 4 countries at the bottom there, those teachers are all teaching at Luton in a Spanish immersion classroom. Those roles traditionally are very challenging for us to fill, because finding people that are bilingual, that are good certified teachers, is really, really hard. And so Luton also has an international immersion element to it beyond the language immersion component. So these teachers are able to come in, speak to their home country, as well as just teach students what they need to know. I believe and they're in a variety of grade levels, right? Some are in 2nd grade, some are in 3rd grade, some are in 4th grade, and I believe one is in 5th grade. So a really cool way for us to continue to bring in people from beyond just Michigan, beyond the United States, going global, which has been a really cool experience for me as well, just getting to meet them and know them. So
We're reviewing a contract right now to hire mid-year. They had some deadlines that we had to meet, but now they're looking to open that up for rolling hires. So now we could probably expand that, given we have to have the contract reviewed by our attorneys, but we're in the process of doing that.
don't ask me to explain the difference between J1 and H1B visas. I am not an immigration
That's why
expert.
we let them do that.
We let them handle that, but there are very complicated reasons why a J1 is different than H1B. But essentially, they have now secured H1B visas that they can provide us, which allows us to now actually bring people in middle year as opposed to having to have them start like August 19th.
This is something I'm excited about. This is our attempt to get creative. We created a turnaround teacher position. We sat around, what are we going to do with a particular school? It happened to be North at that time. 6 vacancies. The culture, there's a tipping point in school culture where there's not enough to save it with just great teachers that are currently there. And then now it becomes a issue where we take people out and tour the building, and they have other options in the building. We have other openings. So we created this turnaround teacher position. We created it in collaboration with the union. It is an LOA that I signed with Chuck that goes through the end of this year. We're experimenting. We're trying something new. We're trying to attract people for a year, and if they like it, then they stay. Next year, they're just back on regular salary, but it gets them in the door. They have to have 3 years of successful teaching experience. The interview process was different. We gave them a set of student data. They had to talk through questions about how they've used student data. They had to talk about how they would use that student data. And it was a little more rigorous, and the union president was there. That's typically not our process. This was something we're trying to assure everybody that we're being fair. And it actually, so far, it doesn't go into effect until Monday. But I think it's a great opportunity to do something creative, to incentivize hard-to-fill areas and hard-to-fill positions. It creates a sense of all these people are starting and becoming a cohort. Even those that are in the building are excited about being in the spot they're currently in, but having a little extra responsibility, a little extra ownership, and trying to turn around culture mid-year, which is not an easy task. So I'll turn it over to Andrew to talk about the results of that and who we've hired.
Yeah. So as you can see, we've hired 6 of our current teachers into this role, right? They're actually staying in their current classrooms. They're not moving. We've hired 2 of our current teachers in the district and asked them to move into new classroom placements that we deemed as these high needs placements that we need an excellent teacher like you in that classroom immediately, aka Monday. And then my favorite piece of this, of course, is the bottom, right? We've actually hired 4 teachers that are brand new into the district, starting in these roles. I will be very transparent and say that 2 of them, again, applied for different jobs. One of them applied for assistant principal job. One of them applied to instructional coach job. Through our conversations, I was like, this is an opportunity that is the best possible way, and this is generally true, but you get into the district, show off your stuff, crush it, and we can have those conversations going into next school year, right? Getting them into the district in roles that we know they'll succeed in right away. And It's going to be, obviously we don't know exactly how this is going to pan out yet, but we're really, really excited. The energy in that building right now is just like palpable, and the individuals aren't even there yet. So it's going to be a really cool place. I highly recommend you stop by North sometime in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I really want to highlight this. First of all, I want to thank Clayton and Andrew and the entire HR team for thinking like this, but also I have to give a huge shout out to LSEA, Chuck Alberts, the entire union. This is when you know that a district is working collaboratively, is when you put your children first and you make decisions that's best for the school. As somebody who very firmly believes in unions and in collective bargaining and in the idea of protection for employees, the drawback as a superintendent, as management, is that the contracts tend to be inflexible. But that's okay, that's kind of the point. But the fact that we were able to do something that was putting kids first, compensating our staff over and above, but with very clear delineation. The school, North, is one of our lowest performing schools. It was one of the schools that had the most vacancies. It was one of the schools that had gone through turmoil. So our job as leaders here is not to say, well, there's nothing we can do. Our job as leaders is to say, what's best for kids? How do we do right by our children? And can we be creative? And so when the leadership of collective bargaining and unions and the leadership of a district work together, you start to see things that are really powerful. And this has been done before. This is not a new idea, but it was new to Lansing. Even in New York, where you all know I'm from, years and years and years ago, we're talking about the 60s, they used to have what were called 500 schools. And what did that mean? It meant teachers got an extra $500 to just teach at a hard-to-staff school. Now we're really being thoughtful about what does it mean to bring in talent? What does it mean to focus on our kids? And we've done this, and I hope that this works. I have a lot of hope in this, and then it can be a model for others, because the biggest fear was that we were going to somehow cannibalize our own district, and as you can see, that didn't happen. 2 teachers, that's it, 2 teachers from within our district that weren't at that school already have decided to do it. But 4 mid-year, 4 people outside of our district, 2 of whom wanted leadership positions, were willing and able to take these jobs. And so I think that's really something that's special. Now look, in 3 months from now, if they all leave and it totally collapses, that's on us. But the idea is that we always have to look at the problem and try to find solution for our children. And this turnaround teacher model is pretty special. So thank you for doing this.
And one of the things to highlight is that people want leadership positions. Well, it's often just a jump to administration. There's not a lot of ladders to climb within a teacher rank. And so we have somebody who's like, I can't start, we were just talking today. She's like, I have to start Monday because I want to come in there and I want to be accountable for what I'm losing a week. Like, that's the mentality we need. Like, we're trying to say, well, we have one backfill, and she's like, I need to go Monday because if you're telling me I need to teach these kids, and I'm going to show you that I can do this, I don't lose a week. And that, I think, is the model of a turnaround teacher. It's somebody who wants results and wants to show you that they can get them.
Yeah. And as Clint's talking about, like the teacher career ladder, right, I think for a long time has been pretty limited, right? The career ladder is you go and you teach for 25, 30 years and do the same job for a very long time. And there's not a lot of differentiation over the course of time.
We love them all.
And
do that.
And that's, but I think the way the workforce has evolved and changed over the past few years is continuing to provide like these mid-career incentives and mid-career places for people to really like set new goals themselves and achieve it at new levels is a really cool thing. And this is just one of those steps, but we're also experimenting and ideating some other ones as well because, yeah, it's important for the profession overall.
All right, here's a summary slide. We've talked through a lot of things, a lot of stuff we've tried, a lot of things we saw that here's some data that, I want to show you, it's not glowing, and then some real highlights that I think are good. There's the takeaway, significant reduction in teacher force. I will lead with it on this slide, because I think that is the highlight of this. Then the improvement in use of data. Like, we're not doing, yes, I did some qualitative coding, but we're not doing, multivariate regressions here. We're talking about what information do we have that we didn't have in the past, and what are we using it for? Like, a lot of this stuff is just we didn't collect it, or we collected it haphazardly, or we're learning what tools we have to work with. So this is something I'm really excited about. And our data specialist is super excited. She's like, I've been trying to do this for a long time. It's just my skill set. Educator diversity, we're making strides. We know we have long ways to go. We've had some little discussions about it, but we're so welcome for ideas because we know it's important and we know we want to keep that trend, even incrementally, going in the right direction. Our stable retention rate, I put stable because it matches some national averages and some Michigan averages, state averages. But I do want to keep track of that exit survey data and who we're losing and being very mindful of who's going, who's staying, and the reasons why. So that retention rate, certainly we don't want 100% and we don't want 70%. But we want to make sure that it is the right people who are like, it's just not for me, and we can honor that. Or I thought it was for me and I was on an island. We want to make sure we're addressing both of those things equally. And effective partnerships, we've started with some good stuff. We've tried not to go all in on things because a lot of times, we chase shiny objects. We want to make sure, is this really the tool we need? Let's use it, figure out what we can use it for, and then adopt it a little more at scale years to come. And then support for inexperienced teachers. This is what the data shows we need to do. This is where we've met 2 out of my 3 goals that I've set for the department, and that goal, I think, is really about the beginning of the year. We focused on hiring. We brought a bunch of people in. We changed onboarding, and we put it on one person. And we said, onboard these people. You're great at it. And it's like there's just so many people coming in that we have to give them a better and more robust experience next year. So we're already planning with Jessica's team and the instructional team to collaborate on what do they need coming in as first-year teachers, not first-year employees. Because we have to get past, I don't come from HR, I come from the classroom, and I think teachers, but you get lost in the paperwork of getting the I-9s right. That's not the world that we should be in. That needs to be right. But we also need to think, what is the building we're going into? How are we handing them off to the principals? How are we introducing them to staff? What can they expect in their first week? Who's there to check in after that? Are we checking in? There's some surveys that we have started to say after the first 30 days, what is the...
After the first 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah. So those are the things I think we know the data says we have to do. We are aware we have gaps in that, and that we have very clear directives to do that. Always open for ideas though, because we don't want to make mistakes and not take in the wisdom of the greater crowd. That's it.
No, it doesn't. There it is. They told me it doesn't burn. Trustee Strode.
Thank you. First off, Clayton and Andrew, great presentation. I really thought it was very informative. I, of course, as a data analyst, have some follow-up questions. But before I lead with that, I do want to highlight the conversation around the interview process, the changes to that. I think it definitely opens the door by having that applicant pool, and that's why we're seeing some great changes there. So definitely great work, and I wanted to highlight that. When I look at the conversation surrounding leaving the district, I know that that's an internal data source, which means we do have the house of that data. The question that I want to know, or that I want to see, is, are we able to trend that over time by month? Are we seeing when teachers are leaving? Is it a certain period of time? I know that we get into the weeds when we talk about schools, but at a bird's eye view, I'm kind of curious where they're falling from comparative to the previous school year. So I brought that up as a mention. And another question I had, again, we talked about the slide with the internal data as far as, why are you leaving the district? And we were talking about there's areas of personal reasons, right? Other opportunities, and it's great feedback that you're getting from the supports of the questionnaire or the exit survey. but compared to what? And so I'm curious about what that retention looks like compared to the retention of teachers as well as when they're leaving. I know that kind of gets into the weeds of it. I'm probably one of the ones that want to see it, but I would be curious to just take a peek at that.
Yeah. Actually, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, excited.
I'm open for feedback. Go ahead.
No, I'm really excited because that is something, as Clayton said, I really would like to implement, and I've talked to a couple folks about this, implement some form of a stay survey, right? A stay survey mirrors the exit survey with basically the exact same questions so that we can do exactly what you're talking about, right? Figuring out, are our people that are leaving, are they outliers, or are they just they've gotten to the edge of what everybody else is feeling? And a stay survey would be designed exactly as like you're talking about. It'd be a shorter version because they don't want to take it that much time. It has to be really quick or else people won't fill it out. But a stay survey, we're working on implementing that to get to that exact point you're making at the end there. And I'll say to their point about the month breakdown, we could do that. I think as we talked about with the numbers, like the overall N I think is 120. And so when you break it down by month, it loses, I think like it's going to lose some of its power because of the fact that it just doesn't have like as many people leaving per month, like per reason, right? Like, so we just don't have that many people, which is a good thing. But you raise a really good point, like are there trends? And so I think part of the reason why we have them sent to us immediately the second people fill them out is Clayton can pick up the phone and call. Like if he sees 2 in a row that are the exact same, we're not waiting for a third.
Right.
And fixing that immediately. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if it's something we're tracking over time, you might not have, there might be 4 months where there's 0, which is amazing, but that's something we still want to see because 100%. If we compare it to 2 years ago or 3 years ago, if we get to October and school started in September and they're leaving or they're pulling, we want to know why. We want to know what's happening with our culture at that point. If we're 48 days into school and we're losing 5 teachers. My other question is when we talk about the Curie and how we're pulling it, I'm curious, do we have a number of teachers that are leaving the district and returning, right? I'm curious about that, if we have any measurable data for that. But other than that, fantabulous, I just made a word, fantabulous presentation, but I would definitely love to hear that data.
Okay. Trustee Williams?
I have a lot of questions. So my first question, going back to your very first slide, is that where it says, let me go back to it, where it says recruit, hire, grow, support, retain, is that just for our new teachers? Because I think this should also be a component on how we maintain and retain our teachers being at that growth point. What are we doing for them? Some people that have been here 5 years versus those that have been here 35 years, what are we doing to keep them growing, providing them the supports and keeping them? That's one of my first questions. My second question, again, is the support piece because it looks like in the exit survey, most people say because of support. What that sticks out, and it's kind of a sort, because if we're not providing the supports that they need, how are we going to maintain the adequate workforce system? And then how is it going to be seen through our children as, hey, we had this teacher yesterday, now they're gone. So the stress-free environment was another key that just really, really stuck out at me. What are we doing about that? Because again, if 42, 43 people staying there, what about the people that are staying, that are in there? What are we providing for them regarding that? Something else that stuck out at me was the terminated or non-renewal. I see we only had, are we not doing surveys for any of those? Because I know we've had several non-renewals over the last few years, and I've only seen one survey based on what you provided us.
And that was a quick one. Anyone who is terminated or non-renewed, or resigns, they all get the exit survey.
Okay.
So that one that says terminated or non-renewed, that actually, they selected that and that's incorrect selection, but they're in there. Because it's not the time of year. That's a mid-year, there's no mid-year non-renewal here in this case.
Okay, you talked about the work, another thing that stood out was the work environment, leadership, and support. How is that? Is that just from, what's the dynamics of that? Because I know there's multi-tiers, and so how can you address that? Because that one, that's interesting for me.
Which one was that?
The work environment, leadership, and support.
Because one was open-ended, and that was the one that one is open-ended, one's a drop-down, so that's what I would need to. Is it this one here?
Yep.
This line? Okay.
Leadership and support, and then.
Yes, so
work-
these are the ones that I coded. So if somebody mentioned in their open-ended response, if they said, I did not get any support, whether it's at onboarding, I wasn't aware of things, I was just given curriculum and I didn't know what to do with it, my principal was never in my building, my colleagues were unhelpful, like whatever it was, if it was leadership or support, my principal, never, there was actually some of this in there from the 4 that left early that I never saw my principal. I'm gonna count that as leadership or support, lack of. So that's what that is referring to. It's a broad bucket, but those are examples of that.
Okay, then going forward, I looked at the recruitment. We're doing a lot in Michigan, but the Cairo University, that is overseas. So we're recruiting from there, but we can't go. So, okay, we're not?
Yeah, so as to actually Ben brought it up exactly, that is from, so our adult ed program, I actually have a lot of applicants that come through our adult ed program. We just had enough people that actually registered on the top 20 list. So we're not doing, I'm not flying to Cairo. We're not doing any, it might be cool. I'm not going over there. Those are people that are actually like within Lansing that have degrees from the University of Cairo. And there's enough of them that have applied to those jobs that have registered in our top 20 list.
Okay. One of the things that really stuck out is your IAG program, but we're looking at but we have multiple languages. Why are we not looking for language specialists, for people who just speak different languages to help our ELAs as a second? I mean, we're not looking to recruit those type of people. Maybe they're a student getting their degree, but they speak 5 different languages. They go to MSU. Why are we not trying to tap into that type of person and bring them into our narrative?
Would love to. I think we need to have open roles to put people into, right? And so those are all people that filled open roles that we had like vacancies for, right? So, for example, I'm not going to use their name, but there is a teacher, one of those teachers up there, there's 2 of them, were science teachers from Kenya, right? And it was really cool to have for the students, I'm not going to name the schools, but like those 2 schools have students there to have science teachers that are actually can bring a global perspective into the science classroom, right? And so, but I think the really cool thing, again, is also like those teachers that can actually bring the Spanish immersion component into Luton. When we have things like EL teacher openings, we're looking at everybody, right? So whether it is somebody coming from MSU who is multilingual, who's a certified teacher that can fill a multilingual teacher position, amazing. Yes, we will happily do that. We'll take as many multilingual individuals as we possibly can. It just happens that those 9 individuals filled openings that we otherwise were not able to fill. Does that help?
It makes sense. It's just a little disheartening because we know we have students that speak other languages and predominantly more languages than just those 9, and we're not out there trying to fill those voids, even by saying, let's find a contractor who can help us at least cover 5 of these languages. Something, because again, that means we're failing our students at that point because they may speak Sudanese, but we don't have somebody, so they're sitting there trying to work through it, and it's not working. So how are we going to fix that? Because that's a big component where we need somebody to help those students. So looking at the IAG, how do we build that or open that to bring that in?
Yeah, I mean,
just to be clear, like we interview those applicants, we interview them for jobs that are open. So if there is an ESL job, there's one at North. If that position becomes open, we would absolutely fill it. We would go, let's look at who can speak that language in this job. We would fill that job with somebody who spoke that language, preferably 3 others. Like that's absolutely ideal. But there has to be the position open, and that's what we're talking about. And so does that make sense?
It makes sense, but
Okay.
again, so we may have to look at how do we create something just for that. I mean, because yes, there has to be positions open, but with the way our district is set up, we still need to think about our children and what can we do to make sure that everybody is learning efficiently and then everything across the board is, but I'll leave that there. And then you said that you don't really go to the HBCs. Chicago State is really like 4 hours away. That is the HBC. So just something to think about. Wilberforce is the other way, 3.5 hours. Something to think about. Because again, dynamics of what our district needs and should look like.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee Navarez Martinez.
Thank you. So I also have lots of questions. First of all, thank you very much for doing the qualitative coding and the research. I think it was my very first meeting where I was like, well, why aren't we doing this? So thank you.
I'm actually looking forward for you to jump in because
Yeah.
it would probably be far more accurate. So I'm happy to pursue this later.
Yeah. So first of all, I'll start with some of the numbers, not the qualitative stuff first. But if we compare the ethnicities, race and ethnicity of our students versus that of our leadership, like our principals, both African American and white students are overrepresented by quite a bit. So we have 37% African American students and 50% principals who are African American, and then 22% that are white and 43% in leadership. And so Latinx students are almost on par with the white students at 21%, but only 5% principals. What are we doing specifically to recruit principals who are Latinx? Do we have a strategy? What are we doing?
Well, I would actually turn this over to Sergio, who is the founder of MyAlice in Michigan, to possibly talk about some of the great work that you're doing, not only in Lansing, but across the state. And I think, first of all, I love the question. But yeah, it's, as I highlighted, that is our big draw. It's leadership in terms of Latinx, and it's also teachers in terms of the Latinx that are low. So we care so much about it that Sergio created an organization. So, want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah. Good evening. The ability to find Latino leaders in the state of Michigan, it's a complicated case that we're learning through the state. We've been to Grand Rapids, we've been to Lansing. Last week, Friday, we were in Detroit. The pool of Latino leaders is very small, and the network within the Latino leaders is very weak. So we're trying to create a pipeline now, because if we don't identify and we don't get teachers, we're never going to get administrators. So, and if we're going to get teachers, we also have to go to the colleges and promote education to our Latino students. So that's what we're trying to do. It's a long-term plan. I hope I see the fruit of this tree someday, but we're going to help Lansing because we're already identifying Latino administrators in other areas that want to come and work here. So it's a long process.
Sergio, why don't you tell them what MyAlice is?
MyAlice stands for Michigan Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents. The scary part about it, that how we say there are only 4 administrators in the state of Michigan that have the title assistant, superintendent. And actually, we got our first superintendent about 2 or 3 weeks ago on the west side of Michigan that became the first Latino superintendent in the state that we have right now. So I'm saying that, and the superintendent wants me to share this to say that we are recruiting this, and these guys are working their butts off, but we do have a shortage that we have to develop. We have good associations of Latino teachers like MAVE, Michigan Association of Bilingual Education, but we have a gap in administrators in the state. And our goal is to bridge that gap. And hopefully I'll see you someday.
Yeah, it seems that we may have an opportunity, if we are able to recruit more Latinx teachers, to create a pipeline to administration. And so it's an opportunity that is exciting. So going into the qualitative data, I was also interested, like Board Member Williams, in the question about stressors. Were there any patterns or on what these stressors were that maybe are like low-hanging fruit, things we could address? And if so, what were they? And I also have a question about whether you maybe could put together like a one-pager on recommendations based on your experience coding, and things that maybe could be done to help with some of these things. So not just why people left, but something that we can do to kind of avoid other people leaving for the same reasons. Stressors.
So off the top of my head, I know a lot of the stressors I include, like student behavior was one of them, and you know, student behavior is one thing because it's also students responding to the environment and structure they're in. So that also it dovetails pretty closely with leadership and support and culture and all of that. So I was really trying to be careful about, are they talking about students, and are they coming from a building where I'm like, that's not really the case when I'm in there, right? And so part of that too is the way they talk about students in there. You can see this is a very deficit mindset approach. This isn't a culture issue.
Yeah, and
right?
I've seen, we went through one interview together, and that person was talking about the students like in a very disparaging way. So it's easy to kind of see that person shouldn't have been in the classroom, right?
And so another thing that might be a stressor that you see is I'm expected to be on task with this curriculum. And that's then just off the top of my head with that one, it is, I'm supposed to teach, right? And we see it all the time. And it's like, I understand you're frustrated. This is a new curriculum. We are adopting it. We're adopting it as a district. And if you don't like that, then I don't know what you were planning to do. Like, we're flexible with this, but if somebody comes in and said you're teaching third grade, but you're in high school, you're teaching high school, that is an administrator's job. You know, that's not one that we should say, well, the kids are at this level. And yes, it's easier if it's just busy work. But if they're calling that out,
Would it be
that's stressful for them. But on us, that's just holding them accountable.
Yeah, a PD issue on some of this stuff. So like a professional development on like needing additional resources.
I mean, I think it's yes and, right? Is that, and I love the idea, and I will certainly ask the HR department to do this, is I think putting together a one-pager on that question and maybe some of the other ones, because you're right. If a teacher comes in and says, look, I was expected to do this, I really didn't feel comfortable, I didn't have the support, this is a brand new curriculum, who's helping me? Like, absolutely. That is different than a person who says, I don't want to teach this curriculum because I want to teach what I've been teaching for 30 years and I'm not going to change. And even though no kid has ever been proficient in my class, I'm a terrific teacher. That's very, very different. And so I think your point is really well taken, which is let's get some qual response here, and then we can try to break it out, because I think that there are some here that are like super duper legitimate, where it's about PD and support and love for the staff, and I think some of them are people recognizing that in the school district of Lansing, we're actually going to hold you accountable to having kids learn, and that's
not okay.
something else.
Yeah.
Some of those stressors are also the expectations. They'll call out, I don't have time to do anything. I'm pulled in every different direction.
Yeah.
That teaching is hard.
It is.
Well, I will also call attention, Jessica's team implemented a really cool classroom management, like professional development for new teachers, in partnership with the ISD. That's an option available to every single teacher in the district, I believe. But really, we're having principals be like, new teachers, look at this, because we know that was a huge gap.
Like having them know that this exists.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah.
And the other thing I want to toss out there, going back to the question about how do we get more like Hispanic and Latinx administrators, that's definitely like a medium-term, longer-term solution. We also have a shorter-term, like immediate solution or strategy, I guess I should say, which is a tool called LinkedIn Recruiter. It's a little bit creepy, but basically what it does is it provides me access on the back end, right, to go through and like contact people directly through LinkedIn who have profiles that match roles that we might have open that we want. Maybe not open right now, but in the future, right? And so I worked when we have time, right, to schedule time with people that match profiles, whether they be in Michigan, whether they be in California, Texas, Mississippi, North Dakota, right? Schedule time to chat with them on the phone, talk them through our district, and just trying everything we can to bring them here. It's very hit and miss. But that is like something we're trying right now to again target the types of people that we really
That we're
want to
looking
be
for.
here. And again, past 3 months have seen a genuine uptick in interest, which is promising.
That's great. So with teacher vacancies, we've gone down quite a bit. What would be the one thing that each of you would say was made the biggest difference between last year and this year when we've gone down a lot?
Good question. I'm going to answer while he's thinking because I can see it. He's usually visible when he's thinking, and also he's in the weeds with it. From my end, it is we have a new platform that allows ease of access. We've seen an uptick in applicants. There's a way that which we can use that platform to say, look at how many people we have. We can send messages, email within it, scheduling. We go, we don't have to call up. When I was hired, I got a call and said, we joke about this. I got a call and it said, we're going to interview you. Are you available at 2:30? And I was like, I am not. I am in Rhode Island and I'm at my desk right now. No, I'm not. And so now you send it out and say, here's my calendar, pick a time, and they have options. And so it's the ease of access. I think people feel like, oh, it also sends a signal that we know what we're doing. And even if sometimes we don't, we're on the back end scurrying around trying to schedule stuff, at least from their end, it's like, oh, there's a calendar, I pick a time, it's recorded, here's the people that are constantly contacting me, it's automated. That part of it sends a signal to people that there's a process that moves with some speed.
I would say 2 things. I think
And a lot of hard work. So I don't want to discount the actual work.
Well, I would say 2 things. So part of it being like the interview process, like the way the applicant pool has kind of changed, but that's only enabled by like Jenny, like the investment that like this board and Christina and her team have like made in the HR department, like giving us the ability to like hire more people to actually like, because having a centralized applicant pool doesn't work if you don't. I'm not saying like me, but like having somebody in a role like mine, it doesn't really work because there's no one to actually direct people to other different places. And so that investment in like an HR team that's actually able to create that pool and then like push people through it. Because when I got here, my experience from just watching it was like people would, like a list of people would be sent to a principal and we may not ever hear back. And that was just like alarm bells of being like, we can't like, we have to as a department to push people through this. We can't just rely on people to like make their way through this on their own. So I think that investment honestly by Christine and her team and this board in this department has been like game changing.
And I appreciate the question wasn't necessarily asked of me, but I think the real difference from my perspective is having a fully functioning, fully funded HR department during the summer. Is hiring for schools happens really in earnest from April to July, and if you're really desperate, August. And you can see that the big change was we were hovering around 50, 60, and then we make this incredible journey during the summer. And so we didn't the last, I was hired in July 1, so that first year couldn't make big changes. Then the second year, the summer got better, but they planned right for the summer. And of course, our hope is that this coming summer is going to take us down from the 20 to, the 5 or the 0 or whatever. And so summer and then having the team in place is what we didn't have 2 summers ago and 3 summers ago.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing all these things continue. And so I don't remember who, but somebody mentioned that a strategy to recruit a more diverse pool of teachers would potentially be reaching out to like the BSU on campus or like going to the Multicultural Center, having some kind of presence there. Have we done that?
So this is a personal story. We had all sorts of plans to do that last spring, right? Because as Ben mentioned, kind of hiring is like a spring into summer situation, especially with college students as they find jobs. Lots of plans to do that last spring. I tore my Achilles last February and was not able to actually do anything. We had a lot of career fairs planned and a lot of that didn't happen. That's going to be different this year.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I'm on campus, so I don't know if I can be helpful, but.
Absolutely.
You can.
That'd be awesome. And just for the board to know, I'm in a lot more contact with the new dean of the Graduate School of Education, Gerlando Jackson, who is wonderful. And in fact, I think I'm seeing him next month. And we've been planning on a lot of these kinds of things. Though I love higher ed and MSU, sometimes it's not the easiest organizations to work with. And so now with new leadership and some real drive from both the new president and the new dean, I would like to believe that this April, May, and of course with your wonderful support as a faculty member there, I think we can do some good work.
So I don't know if this is something that would be of interest, but the School of Planning, Design, and Construction at MSU is having a job fair. And I don't know if there may be students there that would be interested in coming and teaching and doing some kind of job with our students. I know our construction management students are very, good with some of the things that we're doing here. So yeah, that might be a place to do some recruitment if we think it would be useful. The IAG, do we recruit, is it year by year? So like the person gets the J1 for just the academic year and then they have to, for 3 or 5?
Three is the minimum.
Okay.
They don't have, we're not holding them against their will, but like 3 is what the base visa starts at. We have an option to extend it to 5 years. From my limited understanding, the fun part about the H-1B is that actually can be extended even beyond that.
Do these folks come here by themselves or do they bring family members?
It's a good question. They're supposed to come alone. Many of them do choose to bring family members, but they are not.
They can't work.
They can't. Sometimes, again, I'm learning all this myself with the help of IG. They're very supportive. Some of them do work. We actually, one of their wives just applied for a job this week. I don't know how we're gonna make that work, but we'll do our best. But yeah, usually it's just them.
Okay. And finally, so on the HR side, is there a way to maybe, and I know that this is probably also kind of related or going to be tangled with like union stuff, but is there a way to use benefits to like recruit? So I could probably recruit 10 women with PhDs to come work for us if we did IVF benefits. So what are like are those a way to like a strategy to recruit folks potentially? Because I mean, you were saying like, oh, how can we get somebody to just choose? Oh, I'm going to go live in Lansing. I literally have a friend who has a PhD who worked at Starbucks because they gave IVF benefits. So that would be a way to get people to move to Lansing, right?
Mm-hmm. Chime in just a little bit. We've had several different conversations, Superintendent and I, and the human resources team about different kinds of things, including like weeks for paternity leave and all different kinds of things that we know that like parents and or just people with different types of things, like how can we explore that? So we've started to go in that area. One of the other things, I just want to pinpoint this because I have the opportunity to, is we have a healthcare center through the district, and for us that is a huge, it's a free service that we have through our insurance, and it's dedicated to our staff solely, and they're able to go on site and have one-on-one appointments and prescriptions and really no out-of-pocket expenses. And so we do promote and push that and let people know, that's an additional benefit that most school districts do not have access to. But thank you so much for lifting that, because it is something that we are starting to explore.
One thing I'll add, and talking to folks that are coming here from other places, and this is a conversation that I've not had with Ben yet or with Christina or Clayton, but one thing that I would like to potentially explore is some sort of relocation like incentive in terms of compensation. It's really hard for teachers who want to make a move, who maybe don't have a ton saved up, and it's not easy for them to move across the country, even if they really want to move to Lansing, right? But it's also hard for us, again, in a collectively bargained situation to make exceptions like that. And so figuring out a way to make that a reality could be really cool. I don't know if we tap into foundations that are willing to do it separately, but conversations that we can have in the future. But that is, like, I love the creative thinking, so yes.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Trustee Boyer?
I appreciate you all. Hi, Andrew. So lovely to see you. Hi, Clayton. Nice to meet you. My name is Katura. I will say as a disclaimer, that I downloaded the presentation. I put my comments and questions in, so you don't have to write them down. I already sent it to you as well. Great. I like concise. So one thing I would love to say is on slide number 6, we're talking about how many new teachers there are. This is the teacher's years of service. And so in knowing that I myself was someone that was assigned to a mentor teacher, I know having 120 new teachers and not having as many veteran teachers, specifically in the building, my question that I put in here specifically is, how do we help our veteran teachers assist the new teachers without adding strain to our veteran teachers? Because that is another thing that will push them out the door, is when they feel like there's too much, right? Also, I put in here an idea of, is there a possibility to use our highly effective and effective retired teachers to then come back and be mentors? Because some of them do still want to be active in the school district. And so whether it's volunteer, or I know there's a certain amount of time they have to be out of the district before they can come back and work again, right? But some of them, especially if they are pensioned, may not want the pay. They just want to help the district that they have loved for 30 plus years. I think that's a benefit. The next one was on page 11. I appreciate that you highlighted the alternative certification. Yeah, there you go. The alternative cert programs, because I myself did #teach while I was teaching in the district. I did this program and it was amazing. I don't know that it was as popular or marketed as much to say you can actually teach on an emergency cert and then actually be in the classroom and be teaching. So one of the questions that I put in here was, in the hold certificates or hold permit, emergency certs, is that in the permit or the certificates? Because I know it's kind of, the wording. So that was a question. You don't have to answer that
Okay,
now.
I was gonna say, you want me to wait?
Yeah, you can answer it real
so
quick.
that, the permits are, if you don't hold a cert, there's 2 types of permits. One is you either have, let's say you're an English major, you have a MFA, and you want to come back and teach English. You have a degree in that content area. You can get a full year basic permit, which allows you the full year to teach. If you don't have that, and you still want to be permitted, you get a daily permit, which allows you 90 days. So that's the permit landscape. We can renew those, but allows you, it's a different type of permit. MDE treats them differently.
Okay.
The certs, there's different endorsements, and that world gets, you don't even want.
Very convoluted.
Click on one thing and you're back to where you started on MDE website. So
Yeah,
we
I was
could read all
emergency
night.
certified.
Mhm.
And then I did pass the MTTC, yeah. First time, by the way, I'm just gonna toot my own horn.
All right.
So, yeah, it was not easy. And I hadn't even taken the classes yet, but they mandated I take it before I took the courses. But
That's one of the challenges, is they say, take the test, you can get an interim teaching cert, which is one of those. Like,
Listen.
it's only good for 5
Yeah.
years. You can't renew it. You have to be an all-route program, and so people don't even know it's an actual cert.
that world is very
We'd be
mighty.
here all night if we're talking about certs.
Slide number 12, when we were talking about the exit interviews, I really appreciate that you all are doing this. Does this account for those of us who were denied an exit interview? I was one who, when I was leaving the district, I requested an exit interview and my administrator denied and flat out ignored my request. So I know there were those instances as well. So I'd be interested in that, and knowing people who, prior to these metrics, how many people had actually asked for exit interviews where the administrator didn't want to know. And it was like, nope, you can just leave. And then lastly, I will, with the employee experience on slide number 14, I know one of the reasons when it comes to flexibility and schedule, a few years ago, when I first came to the district, my children's school started at 8 o'clock. Then it was 8:05. Then it was 8:15. When I started teaching, it was 8:55. Well, then when my personal children started going to other schools, well, then their start time was back to 7:35 and 7:45. So I know for me personally, the 8:55 start, and then my personal children were starting at 7:40. I just couldn't do it anymore, because if somebody got sick and my husband wasn't able and I'm in the middle. So just for that flexibility of schedule, I know for me, that's what it was. It wasn't that I wanted to come to school 2 hours late. It was the times kept getting pushed further and further back. And I'm like, I just couldn't, I'm like, this
I think
is
that's
not
good clarification
conducive.
on what flexibility might be. I think we were maybe thinking very narrowly about your own schedule versus your children's.
And since you were denied the ability to share your points, we would never have known, which again is
We love it.
ridiculous, and that's why we're fixing it.
Yeah.
But I think one point about that flexibility, which is really important, and I would probably defer to the folks who are ET who have been here for many years, one of the things that was also really damaging that this district continued to do was change start times every year. So schools would be at one time 1 year, and then another for years on end. And so we've been really happy that the last now 2 years, if not 3 years, we've actually kept the school's start time as the school's start time. And our plan is certainly not to change with that. But it's a great point, because it is something that makes the teacher who is also a parent a very hard thing to do.
Yes, for sure. So I appreciate, thank you for letting me share. Last slide, slide number 23. So I love the thinking out of the box. I will take Ben's terminology, thinking out of the box. My concern is, while we had 6 teachers who selected to stay in their current classes, I have been in a building where a teacher left mid-year and her classroom went completely bonkers. And so I would say that's probably one of my biggest concerns with, you're taking 2 current teachers from their placements, and then now you're putting them maybe in a different building. My concern is just for the students, because again, having witnessed it, I myself had to continue to go across the way, like, hey, Miss So-and-so would really be disappointed if you were acting like this, but yet it was kind of no warning. And so some of my questions in here is like, how are we going to support those students? Because that is hard to get a new teacher mid-year. But then also, I do question, is that what's best for the student, to have a teacher change mid-year? Knowing that buildings, yes, need a lot of help, but that would be one of my major concerns. And how are you going to track that, making sure that culture and climate in that school is not changed because a new person comes?
Yeah.
It is probably was my biggest fear of this whole program. And so, Jess, I don't know if you want to talk to this, but the 2 that are, let's say, we're cannibalizing, that we're taking from our district in the interim, the first thing is we did wait until the end of the semester, so there's a real break. And the second is working closely with the principal of the school they're currently at before they're going to the new one, is to make sure that those classes will be covered and supported. But Jess, I don't know if you want to speak to that or anybody else.
Yeah.
I might have to pass this one over back to Clayton, only because I agree with everything that you just said as far as working with the principals and really working through that situation. But I know Clayton has actually done that legwork with the principals. And then I would also say that he has worked really hard to make sure that there has been a plan in place for that classroom. It's not just, okay, well, we'll figure it out. There has been some very intentional work even before releasing these 2 individuals. But I'd like you to speak to that if you don't mind.
And if I could just clarify, I think plans are fabulous, but when you're dealing with students and children, change like this can be very difficult. So I love that we have support for the principal and the new teacher going into the classroom. Again, my concern is for the students who will be experiencing a new teacher midway through the year.
We have 2 sets of classrooms, 2 sets of students who will experience the change. One will be in having not had a teacher. And so that's also what we're trying to balance too. It's like they've had an EduStaff sub in that building. And so we're saying, this great teacher, you're going to get them. So those students are going to get a benefit or a gain. There is a hole to fill. Like that's, there's only trade-offs in those situations. And I think we have to, he was over there today, a new teacher that is applying, touring the school. We want to make sure they're touring the school, not just a virtual Zoom interview. You're stepping foot, meeting the principal. This is who's going to backfill your spot. And we have 2 more to go. And the other one, I will say, is moving within the building and is backfill for a resource room position, which we can fill, which isn't as disruptive because it is a caseload versus an actual classroom all day with those students. So there's a little bit of a trade-off on that one that I think is, it's a little bit easier. And that teacher's still in the building. She's moving roles in the building still. So.
Only because my experience was the teacher was taken from the classroom and she stayed in the building, which was worse. because then you had the students begging her to come back. So again,
Yeah.
that's, I know we'll watch it, but
What I'll say is actually, but she actually have, it's fascinating. She actually has most of her students now in her classroom as opposed to
That's
in
really
the
good.
setting that she's in. That was one of her considerations. I will also say we made another offer. So again, there's only one teacher that's moving actually from school to school, right? We made another offer to another teacher who turned it down because of this exact reason, right? So like it's a it was a really strong consideration that we talked through with every person we were putting in the spot, as well as again principals, because that is our fear as well. And so yeah, we will do
I like
everything we
that.
possibly can to, as you said, plan for it,
Yeah.
and then evaluate, figure out where did we go wrong, where did we go right, what can we improve for the next time if we have to do this again.
I like that.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I'm really glad you highlighted it.
I
It is our
appreciate it.
fear. We didn't talk about it, and you're right. It's about that child in that classroom. What is their experience? How are they being supported? And I think that in this case, it'll be really interesting because in that one teacher, they're now becoming a teacher, having actually served many of these kids. So I feel less. There is one classroom that I am worried about, that an amazing teacher is leaving in the middle of the year, and we're going to have to throw every possible support at them. So, yeah.
Trustee Dr. Rodriguez.
Thank you very much. Who did the study? The U office did the whole thing,
My office.
plus do all the work and hire teachers? That is a lot of work and a great presentation. Now, during all this presentation and the dialogue, my mind was more with the students than were with the teachers or administrators. Because every student comes to the school every morning to find a teacher. And that go along in what everybody here is talking about. I am going to talk about the summary, because the questions at the concern of this board right now, I heard, is what we are going to do to change. Not just to have the summary telling me what you already told me in the presentation. What we are going to do is different. I'll give you an example. You have 220 people that have teaching permits. Can you imagine if we don't have that, we will have 200 teachers less than we have now. That we change the teaching certificate, we change the teacher profession, and we give it to other people that were not having the same training, I don't like the word training, the many teachers in the past. And I don't want to talk about history, but I tell you, it was a time in Lansing School District, we have more teachers than we need. And I had 140 teachers vacancies and 140 teachers September 5th were in the classroom. I want to know what we are going to do by August 28th to have all the vacancies covered. Knowing the historical moment is different. What we are going to do, that we don't have every week with needs 6 teachers in special ed, the 20 teachers and the other 20. I mean, it's painful for the students. Then what we are going to do? Then that is the first thing, significant reduction on teacher vacancies. We know that we need to do something about that. Then are you having a plan that you can present to the board and say, from now we are going to start going to other universities doing that, go to whatever I need to go with Michigan State or whatever, by August 28th. We don't need to say we have vacancies. That is one. Then maybe that is something we want to hear. About diversity, you already heard about that. But you didn't tell us, you told us now because we're asking, we are going to be doing that, and that. Then maybe now you go back and in your wisdom, with all the support that you have, tell us, tell the board, we are going to be having this kind of plan for diversity and everything. I know this is going to be difficult to accomplish, but at least we have a way to go to correct what we are having in the district right now. Retention, we already talked about retention. And the only thing we tell, our retention rate remains steady. Well, you had 120 teachers in the first year, and then we go to 40, means that we lost a lot of teachers in 1 year. Then how we are going to retain that? I didn't hear anything that how you are working with the school principals for retention. And if somebody can retain the teachers, you know who is that? The principal. Because he or she is there every single day. Then that is another thing we can be, how we collaborate with the leadership of the school and the rest. Because otherwise, we don't do that, we will continue having the same problems. I am not complaining, I am giving some vision, some ideas for moving our district forward. Effective partnership, and I think that you have this or you do that. Many teachers don't have experience. I don't think any teacher had experience the first day we went to the school. You started without knowing even how to read. Then, but how we are going to have the support? Do we have meetings with them? What is the strategy we are going to use to retain the teachers and have the principals responsible in that? Because you cannot do it alone. This board cannot do it either. Then how we are going to have a plan they can do that? And I don't think we have that strategy plan, but it's something the students are waiting for. The students are waiting to have a teacher the first day and continue with that teacher, for good or for bad. Then I don't have any really question. I had the ideas in how you can change the trajectory and what we are coming the last few years. I don't blame the superintendent or anybody here today. I mean, we still don't have teachers because something got changed in the society. Okay, we don't have teachers for some reason. When I remember being in Michigan State University, and 50% of my students, they want to be teachers. You go today and teacher, what is that? Then please, anybody who's listening, we need you. We need good teachers. We need people that care about the young people to promote our society and do a better society. And education is no perfect status. Education is a process of perfection. If we don't do a process of perfection, we are not going to arrive there. Then please, if maybe in another presentation or whenever you have time, give us to the board ed. We gave you the presentation, and we, at this point, we are going to be doing that. That is my point.
No, I'm really glad you brought that up. I'm going to have maybe Jessica highlight something that we're planning on doing, and then a more full presentation. But you're spot on, Dr. Rodriguez. What are we doing, especially for the new teachers, to support them and to get them to stay? And so that is something, because you saw that big number, that 120, and the 25 was 0. That's all new. Those are new people. We don't know if they're going to stay or not. What do we do to help and support them? And so we've actually just a couple of months ago started to have a conversation on creating a new teacher pipeline program and network and support. And so just maybe give a little highlight on what's happening. And then I think your presentation to the board, maybe in 6 months, would be great about what we're doing. So thank you.
Dr. Rodriguez and Trustee Boyer, you both lifted something that I think really lends itself to this topic, which is the need for really good mentors. And we do have really good teachers, but there's a huge burden on that, right? So when we have 120 new teachers, that's only first year. So we know that they need mentors from their first to third year. And then you talk about how many actual veteran teachers that we have that can fill that role. It takes a special person to be a mentor teacher, just like it does to be a person that has interns in their classroom. Just because you're a fabulous teacher to children does not mean you're a good teacher to a colleague or someone that you need to coach. And so actually Ben and I have been talking about this for almost 3 years now, but trying to figure out exactly the right pathway and way to do this. So we're going to try a pilot this spring just to see how it works so we can kind of work the kinks out of it before we really launch something in the fall. I'm working with Becky Stevens, who's a retired Lansing School District principal, and she is going to be working with our new teachers in collaboration with Kelly, who works in the HR department, who's also kind of our new teacher whisperer in HR. And one of the things that we really want to do is have very targeted things that happen every single month. So what will happen is a social event because they need to get to know each other. One of the best things that you can have in Lansing is colleagues, and we've seen that even with the surveys that they're saying, I really enjoy the people I work with. And who better to say, like, I'm struggling, I went home in tears, this is happening. Oh my gosh, that happened to you too. They need some people to lean on that are of their same realm or what they're going through or the challenges that they face. But then they also need a strategic plan of the things that we know new teachers need. For example, we talked about how orientation is going to be different this year. We did a really fabulous job, I felt like 2 years ago. We did a partnership with TNTP, and because of our REAP grants going away and some different things, we're now revamping how that will happen for the fall, but we're really excited about that. And one of the things that we even noticed was making sure that teachers have this before they even step foot in the classroom. Like, where is the checklist to set up your classroom? Who are some retired teachers that we can have come in and kind of go, oh, you know what are you going to do when they walk in the door? Or you might not want to put the names on all the folders just yet because you're not sure if those kids are, like, things that a new teacher thinks that they know. And if you haven't been through a traditional internship program, like a certified teacher, you don't know that information. You only know from the perspective of being a student. And so this is the program that we're going to pilot. The big vision for all of this work really will be, for example, in the fall, all of our teachers will come in to fill all of our vacancies. And what we will do is make sure that they feel like they're a part of something really special. They will have a calendar of all of the topics and events. We've even talked about doing pop-up PDs, meaning as Becky works with the teachers to talk about some of their struggles, things that are happening, she can say, hey everybody, let's pop on Zoom for about 15 minutes. If you're interested, I'm going to go over how you put jobs in the classroom to really get kids engaged in keeping the space tidy, making it orderly, whatever it is. We want it to be very in the moment for the teachers and responsive to their needs. So that's one aspect of that. But the real bigger vision is that this would be a 3-year cohort. So for example, the first year would get monthly support, and then you would have a second cohort of year 2. So they would kind of graduate up to year 2. Then the third year, they'd graduate up to year 3. And then by year 4, they can help and then be supports almost as mentors to those first year teachers, knowing that they've gone through that process. So we're really looking forward to launching this because the first year teachers then can tell us this year, what do you wish you would have had? Because we didn't have this program. So what could we as a district, as a principal, as a HR department, as a office school department, whatever it is, what could we have done differently so that you would have had the best start possible to your school year? So we're really excited about this new teacher network. I know that Becky's super excited about it. She's got great checklists and manuals and things that she's already developed to make sure that we have this that can be very responsive to the teachers. But I was really lucky to go through the 5-year program at Michigan State. I had the 5-year internship. Saw the year from beginning to end. And so we know what those rich experiences look like in internship programs. But because of our alt-cert programs, we know that we are now having a different population. When I hired in 26 years ago, there were, I think, 42 people applying just for my one 4th grade teacher job. That is no longer the case. And they were all certified and they all went through internships. Alt-cert is a new thing. These people are really educated. They know their content. And what I'm finding is because for most of them, this was not what they thought their first career was going to be, they're actually super passionate about being with kids. And so I think you're drawing a population that may not have had that full teacher training, but they're getting in it with their eyes open of like, you know what, I have a passion and a love for kids. And that's really what is the very foundation of the people that we really want in Lansing.
Let's emphasize that. When you are doing that, we are doing that. It's all about. Not only you help this teacher and this promotion of teachers, you have the teachers there in that school with them, and also you are helping the students that are still in university, that they were roommates or they study together and say, hey, I am having a good time in the district, come over. It's a tremendous program, a job that I think we should promote as much as we can, because it's not only about them, it's the changing the culture of retaining and creating a new culture of retaining, and that is the beginning. But thank you, and then one more time, you have to hire somebody to do this work.
Okay, thank you. Let me go to those that haven't spoken. Well, you can.
I just wanted to, you don't have to answer this tonight, but I know when I first came in, there was a new teachers network, and that's what this sounds like. How will this be different, and how will the success be measured? Because my experience with New Teacher Network was not phenomenal. And so we can talk later, but because that's what it sounds like. And so
I can respond to that. We also were not very happy with the New Teacher Network that you went through. So this will be actually, we have started completely from scratch. We are actually not even really utilizing the plans that we had from before. This is really in response to the things that we've heard from our first year teachers this year, of things that they had already wished that they had the support of. But I'm glad to hear, because one of the pre and post will be like, did we meet your needs? But it can't be, I really feel strongly that it can't be a survey in September and then one in June. Like, this has to be a month to month, meeting to meeting. How are we doing? What's happening? Are we being responsive to your needs? Are you struggling? What's going on? There has to be really specific checkpoints, which is why we're really excited to be working with HR, because they will know Kelly right off the bat, or Andrew. And so to tie those two pieces together, but it is going to be a work in progress. So I think the spring gives us an opportunity to just get our feet wet too.
And I
So
think
thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, what I heard about that program that you went through was not necessarily great. And I think, I mean, I trust you. So, and I think the big difference is we're running it, we're creating it, and we're creating it with our folks who are looking at all this data, who have these relationships. Because it's true, Jess and I did talk about this, I guess, from the moment I got here, but really in earnest now, because we know that we have the right people who can do it. And that's what makes me very happy. But yeah, you are right to question what we had done previously. We have totally different people, different concept, and I think it'll be great. So,
President Moore.
I will. Can I just respond real quick to that, because I also have a quick anecdote where somebody is struggling, and it's about the ability to know what they need and what the struggle is. Not, we're going to do this great plan and everybody show up, because sometimes it's not about that. That could be a social gathering, that could be an academic setting where you do group stuff. But we have a teacher that has walked out of the building. We had to have a fact-finding meeting. What's going on? Like, you can't walk off the job. She reported it. It's fine, but she was ready to be done, ready to quit. The union president and myself sat here with her, what's going on with the principal. And to this day, she laid out what she was doing. She's calling parents, and she's like in the middle of class. It's like, oh, what? She wasn't a teacher. She wouldn't know this. Kids are using this as leverage, and it's exploding, and she's ready to be done. Fast forward, with that in mind, I'm going to focus on specific classroom management things that I'm going to stop in, check on you from an administrator's lens as a former teacher. And she has one of the highest test scores, because she sees, oh, once I corrected those things and I see some traction and I see some purpose, now I get it, right? We have to figure out what those are, and they're not a training manual. It is knowing, listening to them, finding out what questions to ask, and then actually addressing them timely. So that's just one example where it's a complete 180, because we actually hit the right buttons. So.
Yeah. Okay. President Moore.
First of all, I want to say the presentation was amazing. Thank you so much. My colleagues lifted some awesome questions, so I don't need to repeat myself. I was glad to hear about the mentorship program, because I think it's extremely important that we support our educators, because if they're not well, they cannot support our students. I hope I don't start coughing. If I do, I'm going to pass the mic. Secondly, I don't want us to forget about the pipeline to our HBCUs that are close. Central State University and Wilberforce. I speak about those two a lot. I don't want to repeat myself, but last year, Andrew, I do not want you to be the one-man show. So I'm looking for you to have some support in all of that, and that's all I have. Thank you for the work that you all are doing.
Thank you. Well, you guys asked all the questions that I had. I was checking off the questions. But I have one or two. On the teacher certification pathways and partnerships, we have 93 in Michigan Teach, and 17 in Central. What is the breakdown of the race ethnicity of those participants? If you have it, if not, you can send
Yeah,
it.
we don't have it right now, but I can get those for you.
Yeah, okay. On the, in your own words, why are you leaving the district at this time? The work environment, leadership and support, and student behavior are the three areas that we have to concentrate on, not from HR, but from the rest of the teaching staff and administrators. And I think that as soon as we get the student achievement committee going, we need to focus on those areas, because if the environment is not good and leadership is poor, it's not going to help students, in that building. So we have to focus on those things. Lastly, a couple of recommendations for teachers. And in the interview process, I think you may have an idea if they want to move on to administration. Have a training program as they move in, and then go into what it would take to be the administrator, or those kinds of things. Because if a good teacher who's tapped to be the teacher in charge, but was never trained to be a teacher in charge, or offering a principalship, he or she may take it, but they have not been trained. And being a good teacher, classroom teacher, is not being a good administrator necessarily. So you need to have a training program for that. As to recruitment, Michigan State has two programs, well, mini programs, but I'm going to talk about a couple here. The CAMP program, that they bring students from the state and Southwest with the program for, which is, I'm losing the name, but anyways, CAMP. And there's students that come in. I wonder if in the recruitment area that you folks could go speak to that class, to that group of students, talking about working in Lansing and the school district and the benefits of that. Same could be done with the Latino Studies program, where you have folks who are BA or masters already, but they're taking that class. Likewise, there are other programs for African American students in Michigan State. So targeting those niche groups to invite them to consider teaching, or administration, or social work, or accountants, because we have a litany of jobs in the district, not only teachers and counselors. But I want to key on that though. But anyway, just to go and talk to them, to invite them to think about joining the school district in some way, shape, or form. Did you mention Dia de la Mujer coming up? Dia de la Mujer is coming up, and Day of the Woman, okay? Or Day of Women, I don't know which is correct. But anyway, there's hundreds of folks, primarily women, that come to this yearly event at Michigan State, and making some sort of, or having a table there, recruitment or information would also help. Years ago, a staff of school district would put together a trip to traditionally black colleges and universities, and took students to visit those colleges. Now, that effort was so the students could, find, why don't we do that to recruit, teachers and others here? And the last thing I have to say is that I agree with Dr. Rodriguez that principals are key. And they should be encouraged to make that school their family, just about, and help them be successful. And I know you try different methods, but I think that's, if we don't key on principals who can communicate with teachers and bring all these other resources to them, we may be fighting a losing battle. But I am confident that we will do whatever we can to empower principals as well as teachers and other staff that make up the family of the buildings and improve the climate, the work environment, and have less student behavior issues. So those are my comments, but thank you for the presentation. It was really fine. I'm sure there's no other questions, right? Unless Ben wants to say a closing statement on that.
I have my presentation.
Oh,
Very short.
you're coming up. Again, gentlemen, thank you very much. I appreciate your work.
Thanks for all your feedback.
And now we come up to item number 8, presentation from Superintendent, Mr. Schuldiner.
Well, thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is probably the latest I've ever spoken. This is what happens when we combine ISSs with board meetings, but I think it's actually really powerful that we did that because there's something really great about hearing these presentations within a board meeting setting. So thank you so much. I am going to keep it as brief as I can. As always, transportation, great news out of some of this. Gas cards, 2,390 were requested and 2,390 have been given. That's the nice thing about taking a winter break is you can get all this stuff taken care of. And so we're good there. CATA, same thing. It's an equal number. So 622 asked, 622 got. And the dean number is a lot closer. So 344 asked, 337 have gotten, so that's a little bit more than 100. If you remember, I think the last couple of times it was closer to 200. So we're getting there. As new kids come to the district, those numbers will fluctuate. But really, I want to commend our transportation team, Christina and everybody in ops that I know are focused so hard on this. I really, just want to thank everybody for, coming to school today. This week has been very cold. I hate canceling school, but when it gets to be -20 with wind chill, when it's, cars aren't starting, we do know that we've got to make those decisions. We also know that it is impactful for our families that do rely on us for 2 meals a day and for heat and during the day and things like that. So I just want to thank everybody in this community, with the 2 days off and then today being on. Tomorrow is supposed to be a little warmer, but not by that much. So I do know that it's going to be cold. Please, stay warm. We do look forward to seeing you. And lastly, I think we sent out a message, but we did have some internet issues and phone issues at our schools today. That actually was due to something that was off campus. It wasn't anything to do with the district per se. There was a house fire near one of the trunk lines, and so it ended up hurting it. We have been resolved as of maybe an hour ago. So just for everybody to know that we will have phone and internet everywhere tomorrow, and really just it's great to be here. Thanks for everybody's hard work, and we'll see you in school tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Next, we have routine matters, committee reports. We do not have any reports. Consent agenda. May I have a motion to? Yes, Doctor.
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second? Okay. This is Dr. Nevares Martinez. Thank you. Okay.
Yes,
Discussion?
Yes, discussion. Just
Okay.
really quickly, I was looking through the minutes and there was a portion where we were voting for the organizational meeting on the Title IX. And on here, it states that Levante Hurd's vote was yay, and I thought his vote was nay on that.
We could check the recordings, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask the parliamentarian,
Yeah, and I thought,
is there a way to approve the minutes except for that section where we can go into reference, or is it better to just not approve the minutes today until we get clarification?
Currently, Robert states that there is no vote to approve minutes. They're approved once there are no longer any corrections. So if this is adopted today, approving the minutes as they're written, in the future, a motion could be made to amend the previously adopted minutes if a correction needs to be made that's not made at this time.
Well,
So meaning,
Dr.
meaning that we could accept it and then amend it
And then
next
amend it.
time with, after reviewing the videotape.
Yes, and I believe there is a requirement in the Open Meetings Act that the minutes do need to be approved at the next meeting. So I think the board does need to act today with the best knowledge you have and then make any correction in the future.
Doctor?
Yeah, I maintain the motion and the condition that if anything is changed should be for approval in the next meeting.
Okay. So there's a motion that's been made and seconded. Trustee Boyer, are you good with that? We can approve this and then
oh
come.
yeah, I just want to make sure the record is correct. That's my concern. That was it. But if we
Okay.
can amend it later, then second.
Super. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay, motion is approved. Now we're in action items, purchase recommendation. And that is for EV bus project management RFP recommendation.
Mr. Vice President?
Let me see. We can do them together. Can we put them? No, we can't. We gotta do it separately. So the first motion,
Yeah, Mr. Vice President, I move that the Board of Education accept Patton Gill Pod Cafeteria Furniture / Tables purchase recommendation as presented.
okay, it's been moved in second. Discussion? Dr. Rodriguez?
When we bought the present cafeteria furniture for Pattingill, when that was bought, was by?
What?
Yeah, how many years ago did we purchase that?
That would have been 2016. No, at Pat, 2016. So this is just for the new pod.
But didn't say here.
Yep, it's for the pod. Pat and Gill Pod Cafeteria. Yep, it's not for the whole school. It's just
Oh,
the
okay,
pod.
it's only for that.
Yes. Yep, it's only for the new middle
Okay,
school wing.
my apologies, but that is a good question. Thank you.
Trustee Boyer?
Yes, thank you, Vice President. Really quickly, because we see the amount on here of the funds and where it's coming from. So I am just curious, having seen the new pod and looked at it, did the current administration, did they select what would go in there? Or is this someone else that selected what would go in there? Are they rectangle tables, circle? Because I looked at the space and so I'm like, ooh, okay. So those were some of my questions.
Sure. So what we did was we originally brought in some cafeteria furniture that was very similar to what was in the current school, which is really not at the right level for our older children. And so that's what they've been using. And yeah, I could get down and sit on it too, but it's not very comfortable. And a lot of our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are as tall as me. So so we worked with we just had an administrative change a little bit at Pat Gill. So we worked with the previous and the current, and then we worked with our food service provider as well to find the appropriate level of tables. So what we're bringing in is middle school age furniture.
Last question. Knowing that we have like a warehouse with a plethora of items, there were no tables that
We went there first. Yep, we
Okay.
went there first. We
Thank
absolutely did.
you.
So we had some of the old, like much older cafeteria style tables, but they're pretty roughed up. We keep those around for like events sometimes when we need additional furniture that we cover, but we really didn't have anything age appropriate in the warehouse, but that is the very first place we looked.
That's great. Do they have wheels? I know it seems minute, but do
They-
those tables have wheels? 'Cause
Yes, the tables have wheels and they
That's
fold up
amazing.
very, very nicely so we can shove them to the side. But we're also actually bringing in kind of like what we have here, kind of some of the older furniture with some of the more cafe seating and providing that elevated, older, more responsible,
Like a diner.
yes, like a diner. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion? President Moore?
Yes, I always think about accessibility when it comes to when we buy furniture. How are we meeting those needs for our students? Because everybody's not the same size, the same height. Could you please explain that?
So when we're bringing in this newer type of furniture, that's a huge part of it. So it's ADA accessible, and then there's different level seating for different students as well. And then we make sure, funnily enough, like when we bring in like higher stools, it has different level rungs all over the stool. So maybe somebody who's shorter has different like levels they can put their legs on. Somebody who's taller has some, different levels. So we do look into all of that, and the companies that we work with solely make furniture for schools. And so when they're designing the furniture, a lot of this goes into that. School design is kind of intense and insane what people think about, but yes, that is definitely stuff that we look at. We look at for wheelchair accessible. We work for people that might have different mobility issues and how easy it is for them to get in and out. And so not all of the tables are exactly the same. There are different abilities of different students are able to get in to the furniture.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on this motion? To accept the Pettingill Pot Cafeteria Furniture tables as recommended? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign? Okay. Motion carries. Item B, EV Bus Project Management RFP Recommendation. Do I have a motion? Dr.
Mr.
Navarro.
Vice President Lopez, I move that the Board of Education accept EV Bus Project Management RFP recommendation as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion?
Vice President.
Yes.
I know that we sent out the RFP, but I would like to see this RFP go back out to see if somebody in Michigan can probably do this versus going outside, because we already do a lot with Greenleaf. I think because it was during the holiday time, that, it wasn't, I just think we should send this RFP back out and see if we can get a Michigan-based company.
Any other discussion?
Can the CEO
okay.
discuss it? Yeah.
Go ahead. I couldn't see it.
There we go. There's a delay in this. We did reach out to multiple people, including Highland Fleets, the Michigan Clean Cities, which is a huge consortium of different companies, and also the Michigan Association of Pupil Transportation, which is Michigan-based consortiums that oversee tons of different companies that do this type of work. I personally talked to at least one of them on the phone and two of them via email, both Clean Cities and Pupil Transportation, asking for the push. They assured me that they pushed out. We did not have any Michigan companies respond to the RFP. So I did want to at least be very upfront that we did push very hard for Michigan-based companies as well.
I mean, I'm aware of that because I saw that in the note, but I still would like to at least give them the opportunity to try again now that the holidays are over. I mean, we already know we have the buses. Is it a major definite state? Is it just that important right now that we get this moving, or can we give them a little bit more time to see if they're interested, because, we don't know why they didn't apply.
Any other comment?
I just have a question for those who are just joining or like myself. How long was this posted with the process of locating someone to bid for this?
Yep. So it was out for 10 days, the RFP was, and they received personal invites from myself.
And where did you get the information for the personal invite? Are these recommended?
These are solely based on a search that I did myself to find these companies.
And how many did you locate?
I sent them out to 4, but there's 2 of them that are consortiums.
So we have 4 potential opportunities for this project with a matter of just being posted for 10 days. Is that correct?
It's more than 4 people. So the Michigan Clean Cities Consortium and the Michigan Association of Pupil Transportation Consortium have multiple different companies that are parts of their consortiums. So those are 2 companies that oversee multiple different participants within those organizations. So it's not just 4, but then Greenlink Education and Highland Fleets are 2 separate companies. So 4 different contacts, but multiple different companies. And 10 days for RFP is very similar to what we do for an RFP for all, like when we do construction bids, when we do all of that type of thing. It's a similar, we use a similar timeline for posting our RFP.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion? Go ahead.
Just so you know, I downloaded the proposal. I put all my comments and questions in there. So if you could just kind of read through them, I
Absolutely.
would really appreciate that.
Sure.
One question I do have just for tonight, because you said it's 10 days, and I looked at the proposed time, so I guess I have 2 asks. One is it normal to have more than 10 days? Because I'm assuming this ask may have come over the holidays, and so not knowing everyone's time office open. But then also the second is on that timeline, the dates are all over the place. It was like, sometimes it was like 25 and 26 and then 24. Yeah, I don't know if it was just the way the proposal came through. On the proposal, it was, so I'm not sure if there's a way for them to put that in actual sequential order, because it was, as I was reading, then there was duplicates on there too. So just if that could get cleaned up as well
I'll take
too.
a look at it.
Thank you, I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
you.
No problem.
Any other discussion? All right. There's a motion to approve this RFP recommendation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Sorry, no.
So what was the count?
I would ask for a roll call vote if that's possible.
Mrs. Boyer,
Nay.
Mr. Lopez,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Dr. Nevares Martinez,
Yes.
Dr. Rodriguez, Mrs. Strode,
Nay.
Ms. Williams,
Motion failed. Okay.
President,
Dr. Rodriguez?
thank you very much. I think that this motion of this project should come back to the board, explain to us exactly what it's all about, that we understand what is here and what is the benefit for the district, and dreaming just not yet to read in the last minute what is that, then I think that if you had more information, the vote can change.
All right, thank you. Moving on, new business, we have no business, no new business. No discussion items, report from secretary and announcements. Oh. Yeah, okay. And vision. Okay, okay, excuse me. Okay, let's go with that, because you did ask me to.
I had 2 things. One, you mentioned about the vision statement that you want to put in the
agenda.
in the agendas. You want to put the vision and the mission, right?
That was my suggestion.
That's what your suggestion. There we have a motion there. The other one is what we are going to read, both vision and mission or only mission?
I think, in my view, I think we need to maybe take it to the retreat and discuss it all as a board. Because it's just my suggestion. I hadn't talked to anyone.
No,
before.
I mean, it's not in a hurry to do that. Nobody's going to, I think that will be fine if we continue this conversation during the retreat.
Right, right. Okay, good. Madam Secretary?
Yes, so this last Wednesday on the 22nd, we had our first ISD meeting in Mason. We just were welcomed by the clerk, and we had to sign some paperwork, and that was it. But getting over there was rough on, there was 2 accidents on the way. It was very cold, but we got that done. And we also have enrollment for our kindergarten, our young 5s and preschool, February 26th from 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. You can call 517-755-2820 for more information on that. We also want to congratulate Antonio Williams, who has 100th wrestling match wins, which is really impressive, and we're very proud of them. January 31st is PD Day, so there will be no school. And our next board meetings will be February 6th. We'll have a regular board meeting scheduled, and February 20th will be a regular board meeting and an information study session.
Thank you. We are to public comments. Do we don't have any? Okay. All right. Comments from the board? Dr. Rodriguez?
Thank you, Madam President, Vice President, whatever you want me to call you. Okay. I am thinking that many of us went to the 40th annual Martin Luther King Day celebration. And the celebration was, I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of this creed, that all men are created equal. Never this was more important than that day and the celebration. But also, I was really, and every board member, they were very happy to see all the 11 students, they were writing essays. With 11, 7 are from Lansing School District.
Yeah.
And all about high school, all the high school are from Lansing School District. First, 3rd place, 2nd place, and number 1 place. Then we are ready. Our students can go and win. And I think that maybe next year we talk with the 7th, 8th, and 6th graders that we still the other part of the program. Thank you very much and congratulations. I hope the administration get the names and send to the parents, and then a congratulation letter, also from the board. I think that will be something the students and I saw them there. They were so happy, not about the money, but to feel winners. And we were also happy because we belong to the big family of Lansing School District. Thank you, Vice President Guillermo Lopez.
Thank you for that suggestion. It's really great. By the way, you didn't say that we had an incident.
I know, I don't want
But it was taken care of by Lansing's finest. So a little fire to keep us going, right? Any other comment from board members? I just have one additional suggestion for our HR department. You know, HACU is Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. It's a network of those institutions, Hispanic serving institutions, that could also be tapped for possible, recruitment. Okay. There being no other business, this meeting is adjourned.